new members of land control boards. In the land control board, some of them were in office for over 9 years, which is not indicative to best practices. Some of them had grown roots. They've been there for a long time and were involved in all manner of malpractices. Sometimes having special committees of 3 people, few people, to make critical decisions that we say this must stop. Again, we have been able to resolve a lot of land, long-standing disputes. Inventory of land buying companies has been done and will continue. So far, we have been able to identify or capture information on 234 such entities. We have also been able, through the National Land Commission, to resolve land disputes in Waitiki Farm, as you know, some of you, and over 7,000 of our people were beneficiaries. Keumwiri, where people killed each other again, we are able, through the initiative of this wonderful government, to address that problem. And how many people are beneficiaries? Over 3,000 people beneficiaries. And also Boy Committee, 15,000 beneficiaries. So basically those are our achievements. And again, we may wish to note these others, there is no harm. We have also been able to map all our schools. You know, some schools, whether primary or secondary, haven't been having their school their titles. And we've been able again to get titles for over 762 schools getting their titles. And again, a remarkable achievement. And again, through the National Land Commission, we have continued to resolve several long-standing disputes in various parts of the county, and this has resulted in reducing perennial land conflicts, which are naturally related, and majority of these disputes have been in court for many years, ranging between 5 to 76 years. You can imagine what that means. And as I conclude, without talking about the future, because we shall talk about the future, have we had challenges? Of course, yes. Challenges have been there. But challenges exist for us to think hard and surmount them, not to run away from them or to fear them, but to overcome them. And one of the challenges, and that I can tell you again, which is very important, is to some people some of us, who want to resist reforms, who want to resist change of the reforms that I've talked about. If you again go to counties, especially land registries, again, inadequate human capacity, inadequate surveyors, planners, again, that is something that is a challenge which you address. Of course, as you can imagine, the other big challenge is inadequate funding, because all these processes, all these transactions that I've mentioned require a lot of money. But with the people like you here, we can work together, key stakeholders, and resolve this. I'm proud to see some of you who are here, because the other day we had a pre-summit meeting of all the stakeholders, and you came. Your contributions shall not be in vain, because we shall incorporate them as we move forward. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. The good professor, I will just request that you please just stay on one of the tables. Just stay on one of the tables, on the seats, sorry. Ladies and gentlemen, as that goes on, we already are receiving a lot of questions, and just to set us up, I would like to just share with you a couple of the questions. Silma Paul asks, so many investors are having their land invaded by squatters, and the ministry says nothing and does not set clear guidelines on how this should be settled. They need some answers. Courts take 7 to 10 years to settle squatter matters. And even when the investor wins the case, government interference and politics set in. So we have questions about squatters, we have questions about the land registry and the land board and transfer. We have lots of other questions which I'll be taking us through today. Ladies and gentlemen, this is definitely going to be an interesting one. Let me request that we are joined on the stage by Professor Mohamed Suazuri. Let me also request Eric Nyandimu to also join us on the panel. And Mr. Peter Mwangi Kiratu from Kihiro Mwiru Land Buying Company. And Mr. Irungu Houghton from the Shule Yangu Alliance. Now, since Irungu works for a certain community, I know there will be an issue about gender. I assure you that the next panel will be extremely balanced. We might actually complain more in the next panel. But that notwithstanding, let me just invite our moderator for today, the very able Wallace Kantai.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning. And morning, everyone who is joining us on television. Land, the question that's been bedeviling Kenyans since before independence. If you remember anything about the history of this country was fought over by both the colonialists and by the people who liberated it because of the question of land. So it has been one that has been on our minds, and we are glad to start trying to answer some of the questions about the land issue. The CS, Professor Kemenyi, has outlined some of the initiatives of the government, but there's still quite a lot that is outstanding on these questions. We'll try and answer as many of those as we can. We shall be joined later by my fellow moderator, Yvonne Okwara, looking at some of the issues to do with the future and where we are going. But we'll begin with history. And Professor Kemenyi, I'm glad that you said all that you've said about land, but let's face it, land in Kenya has been acquired by people who have access to power. They use that land to become wealthy or to retain their wealth, which then helps them to retain their power. And that has never been resolved. What do you intend to do about it?
No, I don't think that is what you are saying is true. We are progressively trying to resolve some of these issues. In fact, that's why I said we worked very closely with the National Land Commission to ensure that land that has been illegally acquired, titles has been revoked. We've done this. Over 4,000 has been achieved. That's not a mean achievement. We are aware of that. And this has involved the power, the powerful. It has involved the rich. It has involved the churches. Just to give you an example, the other day I'm aware that the National Land Commission was in Kabete Technical Training Institute, where one of the churches, without being specific, has a small piece of land within the institute. And we are going to revoke that because it's totally unacceptable. Thank you very much.
Small pieces of land, Mohamed Swazuri, but let's face the large pieces of land. It's not so much about illegal acquisition, it's the fact that the law was subverted anytime from before independence by the colonialists, after independence by everyone who has had access to power, has subverted the law itself. So it's ostensibly legal, but the fact is they use their positions of power to acquire this land. So where are we?
Well, that is what the CS is telling you. It is for that reason that the commission is one of the reasons why the commission was formed by the Constitution. And Section 14 of the National Land Commission Act has answered that. That any grabbed land by whoever it is, whether it's a politician, is whoever, will be returned.
Forgive me, Professor Swazuri, I think both of you are mistaking me. I'm not talking about grabbed in the sense of being illegal about it.
Yeah.
The law itself as it was enabled presidents, land commissioners to go and allocate land. So they can say this land was allocated legally and they have still retained control over that land.
Yeah, that's what I'm telling you. You better be patient and listen to this topic. It's a long one. It's not as easy as you are putting it. The law was now regularized because we had so many law regimes before the new constitution. Now they have all been regularized, coalesced into about 5 or so. So part of these laws that have come up, the new ones, have ensured that whatever had been, whatever allocation had been done illegally is now regularized. If you go to lands that were given as ranches, for example, you are aware, very well aware, we did the ranches in Lamu. We revoked the titles in Lamu. So one of the main problems was that because of the many regimes that were there, local authorities through councillors could allocate land on their own without informing the Commissioner of Lands. The Commissioner of Lands also on his own could allocate land without informing the local authorities. So cases of the Commissioner of Lands knows what he has given, but the local authority does not know, and that was a loophole, and the reverse also happened. But now it is not possible under the new constitution, under the Land Act, for either of them to do it alone. The Land Commission, in consultation with the Ministry of Land and the county, respective county governments or national governments, must sit together to allocate that land. Now, that procedure is such that it is not possible for anyone to go through the dragnet.
So you're saying it's a complicated issue. It'll be a very simple, Kenya.
Simply.
Are you saying that every single piece of land, however big or small, the small ones that the CS has enumerated, the very large ones that were done in the past from independence onwards, all that has been taken away from the people who got them illegally or unfairly and has been given back to the people who it's supposed to belong to?
The ones that we have illegally we have taken back are the ones which are public land, for which people have complained, or there have been reports, TGRC or Ndungu and so on. Those are the ones that we have taken back.
You don't want to jump to you for just a second.
Yeah, just a minute. I want to
please.
interject there on this, the question of historical land injustice. We talk about the period between 1895 and 2013. This is when the period in which these large chunks of land were taken, as you mentioned earlier on, through different approaches. One, of course, by some people who are in those days. You can talk about colonial government. You can talk our own previous government. When those days, even when chiefs and chiefs used to give land, it's amazing. And what this law has done, the Community Land Act has done, is precisely to do what you are saying. Those people took huge chunks of land. Now we know the law is very clear, they must be revoked. And the criteria for what constitutes a historical land injustice is there. And we are going to apply that criteria. And those of us who think because of the pre-independence treaty, for example, they can escape, you will not escape. I want to make that also very clear. Thank you very much.
Irongo, the reason I'm jumping to you is because if you peruse the Ndongo Land report, and I wish we had a lot of time to discuss it, we probably won't, but one particular thing jumps out. It says that as one of the recommendations, land allocation without any consideration to the public interest was done, and that should be reversed, meaning the thing that you fight for, which is schools, but other public spaces. In Kenya, though, what's happened since this land was allocated, people developed it, so it's almost impossible for you to come back and restore it to its original condition. You're saying you should bring down buildings, you're saying you should take titles away from people who are probably second or third generation owners of this land. It sounds nice to say it, but it sounds impossible to implement.
So first of all, I'd just like to say we work with a number of organizations on the issue of the protection of public schools, but this is really part of a broader campaign to try and restore public land in the public interest. We have worked, I think now for 18 months with the Ministry of Lands and also with the National Land Commission to essentially try and get a sense of what is happening with our public schools. There are 29,000 public secondary and primary schools across this republic. This is only a small sector of the economy, but it is a very vital economy, a part of the economy. When we came to the end of the 2015 and the deadline that was set for the moratorium on the transfer of public land, I personally regretted that we did not extend that moratorium because much of our land, public land, was still in the hands of private individuals. I was with Chairperson Swazuri in Eldoret a week ago. We spent, I think, 4 hours looking at prisons. There is a very famous total minister who currently has a title deed to a hospital, to land, public land on which there is a hospital, a AP's camp, a court, a fire station, and we then looked at a prison of, I think, over 600 acres that had been allocated to him. And that's Nicholas Biwott, and I can say that because I think the records are fairly clear and they reflect that. That is still part of our reality. The deputy mayoral home for the Uasin Gishu deputy governor is currently held by a private individual. So is the headquarters of the Uasin Gishu county government. It's held by 3 individuals who are currently in court. So this is a very real problem that I think we need to resolve. And I think for us, within the Shuliangu Alliance, there are 2 things that we can perhaps accelerate right now. The first is, and perhaps if I can disagree with the report that I think has been circulated on the status of schools, we may have mapped the schools across the Republic, but we have not surveyed them. And the cabinet waiver on survey fees that was agreed to 2 weeks ago, I think about 3 weeks ago now, is an important first step. But I think what we need to do is to work with the governors and the county governments that are here to ensure that we have a drive that makes sure that within the next 3 to 6 months, we actually do know how much acreage exists for schools, but not just for schools, but I think for prisons, for hospitals, because to be honest, I don't think as a country we are in full custody of our public lands as we speak.
Because even if you think about it, very few of our urban or even rural areas have any public spaces left, parks, things like that. When you speak about just the Uasin Gishu problem,
right,
you've described the problem. It doesn't sound to me like you've described a solution. So the former minister you've just described, Nicholas Biwott, sounds like he still holds title to that. Will that get reversed? Will this land get taken away from him?
Well, I think that is the answer to
that?
the...
Yes, please.
Can I answer that because I was with him?
Yeah.
All the parcels he has mentioned are part of the group of parcels that we reviewed as a commission last year and this year. And the determination reports will come out, but the indications are very clear. Any public land that will be found to have been given to anybody, that one is going to be revoked.
What about what I talked about just now when I was asking Irongo the question, which is restoration to the original condition? Land was grabbed in the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, the 90s. People have built, people have developed various things. And what it sounds like to me is that if it was a public space in the sense of a park, it should be restored back to a park. If it's a waterway, it should be restored back to a waterway. Now we have shopping malls on waterways. Are you going to take these shopping malls, bring them down, and restore it back to its original state?
You see, the first step is, first of all, to declare that that was public land. That's the first step. The law says after that the commission shall give consequential orders. Now these consequential orders depend whether you're going to restrict the place, whether you're going to ask that person to forfeit the land for the public use, or whether you're going to demolish it. Whereas instances have required that we demolish, like what we did in 2013 in Palm Beach Hotel in Mombasa. We demolished the entire 300-bed hotel. So it depends on the circumstances, on basis of each one of them. But the first thing is you must tell that person, declare it that that land is public land, should not have been allocated. And then we give consequential orders.
And if I may interject here again, go back to the issue of schools. There are many schools which don't have title deed. And we are saying over 80% of schools in this country have no title deed. Why has it been very difficult actually to fast track the process of getting those title deeds? There are several reasons. Chief among them, lack of accurate information to enable the government, to enable the National Land Commission intervene in this.
What Irongo was talking about, that they're not surveyed.
Correct.
Yes.
We lack that. And the other thing which I want to indicate there is that it's not only schools, but we are talking about colleges, we are talking about universities. They are also involved. They have no title deed. And the amazing thing after the Ndongo report, ladies and gentlemen, to be precise, hardly in 2005, the PS then, Erastus Mongera, wrote a letter to all public institutions to initiate the process of recovering their own land. And some of them have taken too long, but we are working very closely with them to ensure that is done. Thank you very much.
Now, Peter Mwangi Kirato from Kihio Mwiri, which, if my Kikuyu serves me right, is not a very nice thing. It means a knife in your body, unless I'm translating it wrong. That tells you how emotive land is, has been, and still continues to be. We have done news stories about not just Kihio Mwiri, but a lot of land buying companies, a lot of murders going on because people are unhappy about how land is being allocated. It sounds to me like you particularly in a very dangerous situation by being an official.
You're
very right. But God has been on our side.
But where are we right now with regard to this grand land buying companies that have got hundreds or thousands of members, but the land allocation itself within these companies is not happening as it should?
Okay, thank you. As I start to speak, we have a lot of challenges in regard to the tutoring program.
You just hold the microphone slightly closer.
Okay. We have faced a lot of challenges to start with, although I cannot fail to say thank you to the government for the introduction of this national tutoring program. It has helped the poor, that we agree. But all the same, it has been faced with a lot of challenges. One, those land officials who have been allocated that duty has tremendously failed the locals. One, they failed to include them in the vetting. However, they might argue they had a committee there. Second, they took over the exercise for ignoring the fact that Kihumuri is a private farm, although we had a lot of challenges that we needed the government intervention. Actually, most of us could not have afforded to acquire the titles, but thanks to the government, actually. All the same, I also take this opportunity to thank the DCI office for the security that is prevailing on the land right now. It's also worth noting those criminals, most of those criminals are in. Another challenge that we are facing is the administration. The administration have been used to curtail and to intimidate the officials of the land.
This is where you come and find APs and regular police standing there enforcing the wrong thing.
Yeah. We also face another challenge that, sorry to say so, Muranga politicians have never come to help or to offer any help to us. So you are left, the officials, and fighting with these corrupt government officials. Sorry to say so.
Don't apologize. You're State House. You're allowed to say anything you want.
Yeah.
Eric, I want to come to one particular factor. Don't worry, yours is not going to get very hot. But it is an important issue, which is the fact that in Kenya, one of the reasons that makes people not able to invest, whether local or foreign, is A, land is too expensive. And it's expensive for very unknown reasons. It climbs up in price every single day that we look. Secondly, you're not sure that the land that you sit on as a business is actually correctly titled. Even when you do the searches as deeply as you can, you come back the next day and find, you know what, this land wasn't actually supposed to be an industrial area or wasn't supposed to be titled to you. Does that give you a problem when it comes to investment?
Yeah, thank you. Your question is very interesting, and I think the answer is yes, but in a measured way. Talking about investment and what investors are looking at, representing the private sector here, is that there needs to be sanctity of the title, and there need not be a separate due diligence if you're already having online searches. It should be that if you are able to undertake a search online, or if you are able to undertake a search at the ministry or even at the National Land Commission, then the results that you get should actually be true to the extent that you have confidence enough to be able to proceed to do investment. Of course, it raises confidence questions when you find that the land that you have invested in or you're planning to invest in has certain questions, and you notice this when you've actually already bought the land or you've already started doing certain investment or certain buildings on that particular land. So it begs the question in terms of ensuring that we have an appropriate land information system, a land information system that is strengthened to ensure that whatever is on the ground, it was what is actually being represented when you actually go there to be able to undertake your searches. I'm happy to note that with the private sector, we have already started conversations with the ministry through quarterly conversations with KEPSA, and we do hope that such initiatives bringing forward these kind of problems that are coming from the investment side, talking with the government, would be able to assist in trying to address some of these questions.
You, the private sector, on the other hand, has been accused of being some of the people at fault when it comes to the things that we'll be speaking about, whether it's to do with grabbing, whether it's to do with developing areas you should not develop. some of the places, riparian land in Nairobi, for instance, the ones that we know about in places like Westlands and Parklands, in places near Nairobi West, has been the private sector taking it, developing it, and people come in and start conducting business in what is obviously riparian land. Can you speak on behalf of the private sector for the things that you are at fault at?
I think the question really is that we need to have these resources properly mapped, and especially when you're talking about riparian reserves, we need to have these reserves properly indicated.
But some of them are obvious. I mean, you look at it, it's been mapped, it's on the news, it's everywhere. And the Nairobi governor of my county, is sitting right there. We might actually have to get a microphone to you on this particular question, where promises have been made about places on riparian land that have been developed. Nothing has happened for years on end. So you can't say you're waiting for someone to say whether it truly is on riparian land. You can see it. You can see a river.
Yes, but I think the fact of the matter is that when it is actually mapped, then you're able to define the boundary. Of course, there are certain cases which are really obvious, and of course, in that particular case, then the investor would be on the wrong. But in certain instances, the boundaries may not be that clear, or this information may not really have penetrated the circles where it needs to be.
Governor Kidero, do you want perhaps to tackle that particular question of specifically riparian land and perhaps some of the things Irongo was talking about with public spaces? But you can see a building has been put up, people are developing it, shops are starting to move in. You have promised as the Nairobi County government to get rid of these buildings. It's been years now.
Thank you very much, Wallace. I think the CS was very, very clear in his presentation, but probably the gap that was left is the role of courts in the resolution of some of these land issues. Because, I mean, we, like in Nairobi County, we know public spaces which have been grabbed, schools that have been grabbed. Myself and the chairman have visited these places. We know riparian lands that have been constructed on. But what these people do, and I'll give you an example, like one in Westlands, there's one on Peponi Road, there's one in Kibagare, in Embakasi East, in Langata, in Nairobi West, in South Sea. I mean, I could go on. But what they do is they rush to court, and we get court orders. And there is very little you can do in the face of a court order. So I think that over and above our discussions today, we need, and the courts know that the orders they are giving are repressive, they are destructive, but because of certain influences, they still give this court order. So I think the role of court orders and the role of courts in maintaining and sustaining impunity needs to be addressed as well.
Thank you, Governor.
Can I assist the
Either
governor?
of you, yes.
I think all those the governor has mentioned, all those that Eric has mentioned, matters that have been brought to our desk, and we have called for public review of all those riparian lands. Like the one of Nairobi West, I think is scheduled for Friday this week.
To be demolished.
No, before you demolish.
You know, Chairman, I'm in the news, so I want to see the demolition happening so
before you demolish, there is a process to be followed.
Yes.
Give notice to these people, let them present their documents on how they acquired the land, we make a determination, and then we give an order for demolition.
How long will that process take?
The notice is 2 weeks, which is expiring tomorrow, Thursday.
Yes.
So they are due to come on Friday. Then after that, we now do the determination, and that's what now that's where the governor comes in.
And that's what I'm asking.
Let me finish. Before you even issue the determination, an order has come to even stop you from discussing
what I'm asking is, hold on, I'm just trying to get the order of things. If you're to set the court order aside in the sense that there's no court order, if things happen. Thursday, the deadline expires.
Yeah.
Friday, you start the process in your office.
Yes.
How long would that process take in a situation where you determine, yes, it does need to be demolished?
About a month for us to make a determination of the records of how that person acquired the land.
Okay.
And after that, now you issue the consequential orders. Okay. This is what we did with the Westgate riparian land, which we recovered, and several others which we have done so. Even the Kibagare one, I think we have also written, is also coming on Friday. So there's a process that to be followed, but the law also says, section 120 subsection 2 says, where we are section 1 or article 155, it says that where we are convinced that the land, through the survey and the planning, the land is already riparian land or is already public land and has been grabbed, we only give notice for eviction. We don't give notice for people to come and explain, because it's obvious that land is
Are
already
there examples where it's happened?
Well, no, it has just, the law has just been clarified now through the amendments of 2016, and now we are implementing that one.
So we should start seeing some action very
Yes.
soon. Right, Ted, you wanted to jump in?
Yes, Wallace, actually, what you've just asked is what Wananchi are asking. Wananchi are asking, if it is common knowledge that it's riparian land, then why do you have a process? If it's very clear,
And that's
why
what
do we
we're
have a
saying.
process?
The law has just been passed on
yes,
that.
and I'll also go to the next one. And this one is from info_Kamukunji. And the question is, Land Answer KE, what's happening to the land grabbing in East Lee? What's the government doing about it? And at Gladys Koi's says, many Kenyans are landless and are homeless. What is the government doing to help Kenyans acquire land? Now, all is not gloom. Let me just take note of this, that there's been a long case which has been going on, I think in Nairobi, and we have some good news courtesy of His Excellency the President. Maybe just explain to us what happened with a particular, what do we have?
Thank you, Ted. I didn't expect to say anything, but just for information, the creative economy category of people in this country have very good reason to celebrate, because the land that was irregularly allocated to another state corporation and therefore denying the artists space to express themselves over the years for almost 30 years from 1988 to date has now been acquired, and we've just gotten a title deed last week, just following the same procedures that have been explained up there. And we do thank the government of the day. We thank you very much, Professor Kaimenyi, and the systems that have been put to place to make this group of people really come up and rejoice, and for the government to fulfill one of its most important pledges. Thank you. Let's give them a clap, these people, honestly.
Thank you very much. In short, Kenya National Theatre now has 2.1 acres of land which it can expand to build something else. Now, I had a friend of mine here from Nakuru who told me he deals in land. He'd like to ask a few questions, and then I'll go to Mheshimiwa there from Murang'a, who has a rejoinder to the case which was raised earlier on about public participation and leaders' involvement. Please.
I'll start by saying my names. I'm Kenneth Mbaria, an investor from Nakuru County. I have some 2-3 things maybe I would like to touch. In Nakuru County, we have 3 lakes. We have Lake Naivasha, Elementaita, and Lake Nakuru. First, before I go to that, I would like to congratulate our government and thank everyone participating or involved in the land issues, because they've made a good step. The question is, how is the government doing to ensure that there are no grabbers going around the lake, the 3 lakes? Thank you.
Thank you. Maybe Wallace, we can take those ones up, and then I'll come to Mheshimiwa there to, or maybe I can walk there and
as you walk, because I know you walk slowly, Ted. You, but as yes, wanted to step in about the issue of Kihimwiri. Please go on.
Yeah, thank you very much. I just wanted to indicate that Kihimwiri and other land buying companies are private companies. But in the spirit of resolving these conflicts to the extent that people are murdered, the government involved the constitution to step in public interest. That's why we came in. Because one can argue that this is a private company and we have no business. And I can tell you, as late as 2 weeks ago, it's only that he didn't tell you that we met with their shareholders. And what is remaining is just about 422 parcels of land, which we shall be acting upon in due course. And not only that, we have also made certain initiatives, not only for this particular group, but others, to bring people on board so that the shareholders can be listened to and we get an amicable solution. The other issue which was mentioned earlier on is the issue of land being very expensive for investors. I think
and also for individuals.
And even individuals. But I want to indicate that we will come up with what is called Land Value Index, which is now before the Departmental Committee of National Parliament, so that we have a rough estimate of pieces of land, the value of pieces of land in the entire nation, which forms a basis. Because what has happened in these mega projects which we have so many speculators in this country. When they hear the standard engagement rate is going to pass through somewhere, they hike the prices. But that index is going to solve that. Thank you very much.
All right, Muranga wanted to rejoin that.
Thank you very much. I'm Sabina Chege, Member of Parliament from Muranga County. And first and foremost, I want to thank the government through His Excellency and also the Ministry of Lands for what they came in to do. I want just to mention that the issue of Kihumuru is out of public interest, where we had so many directors had been killed and the government had to come in. I really wanted to clarify what the director said, that the politicians are not there and the people or the public were not involved. I personally went there. We were with the PS and earlier the CS Matiangi. We went, had public participation, sat down with the team and with the shareholders, and we agreed on a way forward. For the use of administration, we had 2 weeks where the administration had to pitch their tents there to make sure that we had no more killings at Kihumweri. And I want to thank the government because finally, we went even with His Excellency to issue the title deeds. My request to Professor Kaimeni, I know we have had this conversation before. I want to thank you that you also met with the directors, is for the remaining parcel of lands to be divided, because that can also be another source of what had happened before. But I want to tell the directors, I think if you say the politicians were not there, I was there and I'm a politician. His Excellency was there and we stood there, and he's a politician too. So we have to protect our people, even if it's private land. We must protect the Kenyans. And I'm also hoping that with what we also have for Nanga, Kihoto in Naivasha, again from the people from the same area, Muranga, that is also going to be sorted, so that we have, from back 1978, some of the oldest people we have in Muranga have never had their title deeds, and I request the Ministry of Land also to help us sort the Nanga Kihoto issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Chege. And I want to jump in, Dr. Soju, before you come in. People assume in Kenya that land injustice is about the rich oppressing the poor, and that's been our understanding of it. But even middle class and people with a bit of means are also suffering. So you go off, save a lot of money, work very hard, go and buy a piece of land so you can settle your family. But one morning at 6 a.m. you see bulldozers at your gate. The problem there has been that you come after the fact and say, this land was illegally allocated, this land wasn't supposed to be for this purpose. The most recent or the most famous perhaps is Syokimau. So we had a lot of people who have invested very hard-earned money, their houses are basically broken down. Where is the justice in this? Who will pay for the people who have done these savings? You can't come back and tell them you should have known better.
First of all, the law, the constitution is very clear. Upon a complaint from an individual, a community, or national or county government, it is not possible, humanly possible, for the commission to know all those historical injustices until someone brings them out. Once they are brought out, the new law that I've told you has now categorically given the steps to follow for you to unravel that historical land injustice. And the orders there, the remedies there are given. Either restitution or eviction of the people or sharing of the benefits of that land, they are all given in the Act. So it is not possible just to wake up and say this is an issue. Those ones who have brought their issues to us, historical injustice, we have been going there and resolving them. We have resolved thousands, hundreds of thousands of cases Mheshimiwa is talking about Sabina Chege there. He's talking about the ones in Kihoto, in Nakuru. We were there and we are there. We are resolving that. In Nakuru we have Barina, we have Balina, we have Oljorai, we have so many of them. In Mombasa we have so many of them which we are now resolving. Historical land injustice. In Naivasha we have so many of them. In Samburu, like Kipia, we have so many of them which we are resolving through historical land injustice. But I want to answer the riparian issue. One of the factors that is impeding the speed implementation of our work, as the CS has said, is the issue of funding. Now, we have gotten an organization, have partnered with one organization for us to meet all the people who are invading riparian land in the 3 lakes that he has mentioned. Because there was a treaty signed in 1932 to reinforce the law that was there, that no person is allowed to construct within the riparian land. That treaty has never been repealed. In fact, it has been reinforced by the Constitution. And therefore, we are about to call the riparian people near the riparian land to sensitize them that it is wrong for them to do that. And we also have this case where the water keeps on changing, the age of the lake. And we also have in Malindi the edge of the sea. It has now receded for 1 kilometer. And everybody is going there to be allocated that land. That's what we are trying to say, that that land is still non-allocatable. According to Section 12 of the Land Act, such land cannot be allocated to anybody.
Don't worry about those, because the sea will come back.
And that's why we are saying they should not be allocated. Because after some time, the sea will come back and then they can complain to the government again.
But the question is, Kehi Omiri has raised it, Honorable Chege has raised it about the political issue of land. We have not even handled it here at all. Let's face it. Perhaps UCS should take this on Irongo before you come in. Land is ultimately a political issue. I started by saying that Kenya was built on land injustice. Colonialists grabbed it, created a country out of it. We came in with the first independence governments and later governments and reinforced the injustice of land in this country. When you speak about riparian land, you speak about the Mau forest. It's been almost politically impossible to kick people out of the Mau forest. How do you solve the politics of land? You've spoken about the administration, the technical elements of land. The politics is difficult. You come to an election here, you can't kick out 10,000 people who might turn out to be voters.
First, the way I see it, the politics of the land question, you are absolutely right. First and foremost, it's important to work very closely with the politicians themselves. And I'm happy they are here. And the Departmental Committee on Lands is here, Senate. The Chair of Senate on Land Issues is here, Keleni Kibuchi is here. We need to work very closely with them. That's number one. And secondly, there is the issue of public participation, which is constitutional. Some of these decisions have been taken without public participation. I think that is a cardinal. And finally, I think it is important to emphasize the lawmakers, the registrators, they are here again. That which they have approved in law must be implemented to the letter. There are no two ways about it. If it says revoke, we revoke. If it says remove somebody, no compensation, there should be no compensation.
But that's not when there's 10,000 votes pending.
No, it doesn't matter. I think this is what it means. One must be prepared to bite the bullet. And now we want to appeal to politicians, not to have to talk something today and a different thing tomorrow, simply because they want to vote. It is all Kenyans, all Kenyans. And when we talk, let me address the issue of graviosis. Yes, there's grabbing mania amongst our people. It takes two people for that to happen. So I want to, when we say Bagumi initiative, whatever it is us being our brothers and sisters keepers. Let us name and shame land grabbers. This is what was recommended in Dongo report. So even as you look at me, because you are looking at me, ask yourself, that man or that woman has grabbed land, whether next to a riparian area, what have you done about it? You are an accomplished and a passive one if you do nothing about it. Thank you very much.
Politicians, prepare your teeth, bite bullets. Irongo.
So, well, it's maybe just picking up from the CS. I think I've talked to maybe about 50 or 60 land defenders, and they're very, very, I guess what you'd call very ordinary people. Head teachers, members of the community, members of boards of management, administrators, and their experience of reporting on corruption is actually very isolating and very fearful. Many of them are very scared to do exactly what the Cabinet Secretary is saying should be the action of all patriotic Kenyans.
Why?
I think the reality is that there's not much support for them. The Witness Protection Agency takes too long. The courts tend to vilify them. At the moment, we are supporting a head teacher, a journalist, a member of parliament, who in the case of the Naka Primary School have actually just taken the action to protect land that was passing into private hands and had actually been facilitated by our courts. And it's a complex issue, but I think the point is this: if we do not protect our land defenders, we do not have a structure for doing that, we cannot expect them to continue doing this. But having said that, there are many head teachers that I know that are earning salaries of between 50 and 70,000 shillings who protect land that is worth 100 to 200 million shillings. And they do this out of patriotism for their country and a belief in the children should have an education future. But let me just raise one other issue, which and then I'll hand back the mic. But I think the key thing for me is, I mean, as a non-land administrator, one of the things that I'm very surprised about is that we have parcels of land that are double titled, multiple titled. And then we have other parcels of land that don't have titled. Now, what's the interesting about that? It is private land that tends to be over-titled and public land that tends to be under-titled. And I think what we need to recognize is that colonialism is still alive with us. In the days of the settlers, any land that did not have a title or was not occupied was seen as undiscovered or unutilized land. What's happening now is that any piece of land that does not have any development on it is actually fair grab in the minds of most Kenyans, and not all Kenyans, because some of us are patriotic and we see the importance of public land. What I don't see yet from government is, and also from the 47 county governments, is a commitment that every ward, within 10 minutes of your home, you should have a green space. You should have a place that you can take children to go and play and to have recreation. We should have parks in every ward. We should protect all the public utilities in our wards. And I think that's the way to go. I think if we began to value public land as public land, then we would not have the absurd situation of the roundabout just outside St. Paul's Cathedral, the church there. That roundabout actually has a title deed.
Irongo, you were tear gassed, you were clobbered. This is, I believe, January last year with regard to the Langata Road Primary School case. The very famous one, the school children were tear gassed. It's been now probably 22 months since. Has anything changed with regard to how the government, how the public, and how the people themselves are responding to these land questions? Because you were vilified. You were told you were basically being a troublemaker.
I mean, I think what's changed is that we, first of all, have seen the dangers that are posed by land grabbing of our schools. And I think the leadership, of the CS and the chairperson has really helped that in terms of the translation of a presidential directive into something that protects all schools. So that's the first thing. We have seen many cases of communities rising up and reclaiming their lands. And sometimes it is dramatic, sometimes it even is borderline legal. But I think the reality is this, is that if you don't see communities taking ownership of their lands and fencing their schools, whether it be with their proper walls or even simply with trees, as we've started planting in places like Wasingishu and others, then you will see the loss really of public facilities that will be gone, not just for this generation, but forever. So I think we've seen some changes. What I think we need to accelerate very hard in the next 6 months is the titling process, because I think what the figures we have from the ministry is 7,000 applications have been made by head teachers, but we've only titled about 769, or around about 600, 700. And I think that is too low, really, in terms of the epidemic that we are seeing, as the CS calls it, grabiosis.
Eric, you wanted to jump in?
Yeah, I mean, we are struggling here with the issue of historical land injustices, but I think we also need to look forward in terms of how do we resolve these problems going forward. And I think one of the ways that we can actually be able to do this is by instituting the spatial data infrastructure. What we have been doing is that we have been mapping the land parcels independent of any other infrastructure. You map the roads independent of the lands, you map the lands independent of the roads, and you are maintaining separate databases for the same, so that we end up with issues like somebody has bought land, but then after some time you're being told that that land is actually sitting on a road.
Yes.
So if we can actually make all this uniform by ensuring that all this data is sitting in one platform to reduce on issues of data duplication. And that's why the spatial data infrastructure is a very, very important facility, is a very, very important infrastructure that would ensure that we can actually share data and we can actually work from a common database.
If I may interject on this matter, of course, where we are concerned, the public is concerned about a haphazard planning of our counties. The public is concerned about recreational facilities of public spaces. That's why we've come up with a physical planning bill, acted to be acted, I believe, in due course. That's why we have national land use planning policy. Again, that will be in place. And we have even amended, or in the process of doing it, urban areas and cities bill, so that we can, again, we are both to manage our markets, our urban centers, again, to ensure that there is rationale in the way we plan. And finally, what you said, the National Special Plan, I said all the resources in our space will from being now on managed in a better manner, in line with the Vision 2030. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Wallace, this question, my timeline is hot with the issue of Langata. Maybe the CS can just lay a comment to
the school.
The school. CS, can you just tell us about what happened? Where is the case? I think it's in court. Give us a comment about that. And while you're at it, DJ Patches from Meru asks, what is Kaimenyi and Sawaziri doing to the volatile border of Tharaka and Meru counties? They've been fighting for decades, and seems this electioneering period, they will kill each other. What is happening? We also have something from a guy who watches this program every morning from Kisumu, Bob Ndolo, minority leader. He asks, the National Assembly passed a law that disbanded county land boards that were doing good jobs within the counties. Ask Mr. Sawazuri on what are they doing about the counties, that is Bob Ndolo, Kisumu Assembly. Maybe you can take that up, and then I'll come back and ask 3 or 4 more, including who owns the largest tracts of land in Kenya?
Yeah, on the issue of this Langata land,
the seat has suddenly turned very hot.
It's good to spread our responsibilities. I'll be requesting the PS to answer that question. But the question I want to answer is the issue of the Rakanithi and Meru counties dispute. I want Kenyans to know that yes, indeed, the government has not sat down or back on this matter. As late as last week, the ministry officials met with the political leaders, elected leaders from Meru County, the Rakanithi County, just to address the issue of that boundary. And indeed, that matter was addressed by the Ogongo committee's report in 2009. And we agreed last week that all what needs really is to implement the 8 recommendations contained in that Ogongo report, so that we can resolve this boundaries dispute once and for all, so that again nobody says they will impeach Kaimenyi because of that. So it's going to be done. Thank you very much.
I think the issue of Langata Primary School is way behind us. I don't know. You people
are we sure?
Yeah, we went there, we flattened the whatever was being put up there. We gave the school all authority to use their land. Has anybody gone back there?
Did it have to take tear gas, school children being clobbered, some of them passing out, for that to happen?
As I told you, it is upon a complaint. When a matter is being brought to us, we move to action, and we moved into action immediately, and that land has been restored back to the institution. I want anybody to tell me whom we have seen there.
No, we appreciate that. The question I'm asking, and we're coming to the end of this first session, so I want to make sure I get this in.
Yeah.
Langata Road Primary School, it's an injustice by any way you look at it, right? But the security forces of the country were the ones which were being used to perpetrate the injustice. Like I'm saying, Irongwe sitting there, he was part of it. A lot of people sitting in this room were part of it. We all saw it on television and the newspapers and online. Did it have to take that for the justice to take place?
It didn't have to, but it happened, and we moved in to restore order. The important thing is that the end justifies the means. We have gotten a title back to the school, and we have at least managed to thwart any attempts to retake the land. I think somebody was mentioning about the county land management boards, which were disbanded by the amendments by Parliament. I think as a commission, we still think there's a role for the committees there. So instead of calling them county land management boards, we are now reconstituting them into committees, because they are very vital. They are the ones who are doing the work on the ground. The commission alone cannot go there, cannot operate from the center. It's against the constitution for us not to devolve We are supposed to have devolved units there, and we are going to ensure that those ones are working.
Right, Ted, we'll probably take over and...
Yes, I think I'll sit at this eminent table. Mr. Chandari has a question, and the governor also has a correction. Maybe I'll start with the governor, and then I'll go to Mzee.
I think on the issue of Langata Road Primary School, we know how it happened. The history goes back to 1965, and how it was subdivided, how the airport view was awarded the land, and what the chairman of National Lands Commission is not confirming is whether that title has been cancelled, because on my records at City Hall, there's been no change.
Is that a direct question to Dr. Swazuri?
No, I'm just saying so that he can confirm.
No, he's sitting here, so I'm asking you, is that a direct question to him?
I'm asking him if he can confirm, because
I
on
can
my
confirm.
records,
I can confirm.
it has, can I just finish?
Okay.
On my records, it has not been changed. I've not gotten any document saying that the airport view title has been cancelled. That's one. But Wallace, you did raise an issue where certain times government forces are used, and obviously they intimidate with guns. And the best example is one land, which is owned by the county government. County government bought 5,000 acres of land from Kayole Estates back in 1971. In the 90s, the army invaded it and took 3,000 acres without due recourse to any compensation. And 4 weeks ago, the remaining 2,000 acres, the road that passes through, they blocked a road.
They being who, the army?
Yeah, the army. So the road from Ihango, from Eastern Bypass, which has been joining Kangundo Road through Matopeni, is blocked, and nobody dare challenge them, because they've got guns
and tanks and aircraft
and tanks. We went to the police. Police said no, hapo hatuwezi. Yeah. This issue, I've talked to them, and I'm sure the chairman of the Senate Lands is here. Last week I was in the Senate. The chairman of in Parliament is here. They know this thing has been. I mean, it's been in court. The government will not come to court. They'll not put a defense. But so land grabbing is just not restricted to individuals or people who are located, even at the highest level. Could you just comment? I mean, people of Mihango need a solution. Their road is blocked, and nobody dare come to it, because you'll be faced with tanks. Thank you, Chairman.
Manu Chandari, I know you.
And before that goes on, but Governor, somebody is asking me, ask Governor about Isili land. Governor, what's happening in Isili?
And also something, Ted, that is very close to Swazuri's heart. I know you have been handling that issue directly, haven't you? Okay. But Governor, go on.
I mean, the issue of Isili, there's around Isili Section 3, where the Air Force land was grabbed. We formed a committee with the
Air Force land was grabbed?
Yeah. And we've identified.
Air Force, the one that has big aircraft and guns. Someone actually stepped in and grabbed that land.
It looks like the Air Force doesn't have tanks. And we've identified about 48 buildings, and we are working together with the Air Force commander on getting this resolved, and most likely those 48 buildings are going to come down.
So on the one hand, Governor, sorry, like I said, I'm a very simple Kenyan. On the one hand, the military takes land that shouldn't belong to them. On the other hand, someone in this country is daring enough to take land that belongs to the military. Good heavens.
Yeah, let me intervene in this matter. And that's why I talked about these disease control abuses. It does not matter who commits this offense, but we must look at the context of the background behind which land was acquired. In law, government can compulsorily acquire land for health purposes, for security, for all manner of reasons, and good reasons for that matter. Therefore, we must look at the background. Whereas I understand what my brother Evans Kendero is saying, let's look at the background behind how the government has acquired that land. That's number one. Again, we did mention about historical land injustices. And then this new law is very clear. It doesn't matter who you are. The National Land Commission must be able to look at that and take action. And the avenues are many.
But who enforces? I think the question is who enforces the action?
Let me finish. The Minister of Interior and Coordination of National Government is key in this. This is why we must work very closely with them. And we agreed we shall do this. We shall have zero tolerance to this grabbing mania. Thank you very much.
Isli?
I think whatever my CS is calling grabiosis, I always say that we Kenyans have in our blood allergy to empty space.
That's true.
Yeah, whenever we see it, our body twitches, and we have to feel it out.
Including in the air.
Including in the air, because air is also public land. Now, so it does, as he says, and as the governor says, it doesn't matter who is involved. The law does not categorize and say that a politician is immune, the county government is immune, military is immune. The law is across the board. And we all passed it, the constitution. We say that anybody, and that body is described as anybody in Kenya who grabs land will be subjected to the law. So it is very, very simple. Just bring the matter to us.
But the law is an enforcement issue. If the army or any other powerful institution like that is the one that's involved, surely you can't expect people to walk in there.
There is no powerful institution under the constitution. They are all Kenyans. They are all institutions that are subject to the law. So anybody who thinks that they can grab land because they are in powerful institution with guns, with aeroplanes and so on, those ones are not covered under the law. We are all subjected to the same law. And that's what we are saying, as the CS was saying, as we are moving towards the general elections, there's some sense of indication as saying that, go slow on these matters, yes, because, there's politics coming, and there is no place in the law that says whenever elections are coming, stop your work. There's no like that. And I have told my colleagues, Alex and so on in Parliament, that if there is a matter to be sorted out, the Commission will go there, whether elections are tomorrow or the day before. Because land issues are not programmed by political influence. The law is very clear on that.
Okay, Ted.
Thank you very much. I just want to raise 3 points. Number one, investors they're very worried whether their lands are all right or not. I'm sure that there's a lot of space on the State House, and tomorrow part of it will be all grabbed. We need to find out the solutions for this. I have 3 cases, very simple. I'm a chancellor of USIU, United States International University. We bought the land in 1999. And the other day, just about 3 months back, somebody came along, broke our fences, brought about 3 in the morning, brought the trucks, started sending out and digging the the foundations and whatnot. We stopped it. We got it next day, we got it stopped. We now find that the land was originally bought by His Excellency the President Moi, together with Arthur Magugu. It was then combined together to 40 acres. After that, the land was then sold to some I think Israeli company. After that, the land was then sold to East African Insurance Company. And since 1999, USIU had bought that land. And now we are without that land. I just don't understand how long can it take for a public institution. Nobody says nothing. It's just in the court, that's it. And court will go on for probably I don't know how many years. That's number one. Number two, I was chairman for Street Family Rehabilitation Trust Fund for 10 years. And I think it was Mr. Joseph sitting over here, PS Kinyua, who also allocated with Ambassador Musaura the land of Kenya Pipeline for the children, street children. The land was everything done. Finally, they said, give us the titles. So we'll submit. I think Kenya Pipeline Company submitted the titles, and then since then, the land has been grabbed. And what can the street children do? Tell me. That's number two. Number three, Star Health Center. We have already, I think, 55 acres of land, and some part of the land is already grabbed. Now, you know, there has to be somewhere to go. Now, His Excellency the President wants to run at 50 miles an hour, while all our institutions are doing very good job, but they are still at 20 miles per hour. We cannot expect this difference of... Now, how would an investor come and tell me now that, Mr. Chandaria, can I invest in this country? I want to invest in 3 hospitals in Nairobi. And they always tell me, hey, but what about USIU? Hey, what about Starehe? Hey, these are all public. It's not my land. It's public land for public utilities. And I think that unless and until we start saying you could be slow, but slow cannot be so slow that it cannot bring results. We need to go little bit at the speed. If you want 100,000 people tomorrow for IT, I'll collect it in 6 months' time. Just get the spaces, get the equipment, and I'll get to the 100,000 people, young Kenyans, very ready to work on IT to put all your land registry in order. But there has to be some determination. And I think His Excellency is calling this summit for the purpose of faster action, not action to defend. Defense is not the issue here. Thank you.
Thank you, Manu Chandari. Mr. President, if you're watching this, Your Excellency, Manu Chandari is suggesting that there will be apartments in State House very soon, if you're not careful.
Yeah, let me try and respond to this question. We hear what Manu is saying. Of course, we want to run. Yesterday, that I want you to know. Some of the issues that you've raised is born on criminality. On criminality. Meaning, there must be expeditious investigation so that the bodies that are charged with the responsibility of addressing these issues are given that task. That's why I said earlier on, we are working very closely with the Land Fraud Unit, and we have had several meetings. That's number one. Secondly, it's important to appreciate the fact that in law, there is something called Environmental and Land Court, which was beefed up the other day by the government of Kenya. So we have more judges dealing with land matters in that court. Over and above that, Manu, you're forgetting that you have a man on my left here in charge of the National Land Commission, whose responsibility is to do exactly what you are saying, to address these land injustices. Whether the complaint is brought before them individually, they can also do it on their own. Ours is to capitalize on that law and do it. And finally, of course, we have my ministry, again, which is charged with that responsibility of making sure that we do, yes, due diligence in terms of establishing the ownership of these pieces of land, like the ones you talked about, and action will be taken. Thank you.
Can I interject on the USIU, Manu? Immediately after it came out, we wrote to all the parties who are involved. We wrote to President Moi, we wrote to USIU, we wrote to the developer for them to bring their documents so that we can now start tracing who actually owns the land. Out of those 3, is only President Moi who has written back. We are still awaiting your documentation. We are still awaiting the developer's documentation. With only one party bringing in their evidence, we cannot proceed. So it is up to you now to bring your documents. Your institution has just been complaining out there. It has not brought us their documents.
It's in the court, but I will get it this afternoon.
Yeah, you bring it through.
Sorry, Manu Chandra, he wasn't got on the mic. He said it's in the courts. You're bringing it this afternoon.
Yeah.
The papers. Sorry, Manu Chandra doesn't have my microphone. You bring the papers this afternoon.
Please bring them this afternoon.
Mohamed Swazuri.
Let me also see something very important. Kenyans have this appetite of running to court to settle land disputes. I want to advise that there is something called traditional dispute resolution mechanism, or alternative, which are under the province of purview of the National Land Commission. So please let us try these traditional dispute land mechanisms kabla tuende kotini, kwa sababu in some instances, and I said it earlier on, people have been caught for 5 to 75 years, to the extent that they die, and the only people now have to claim their rights later and their great-grandchildren. So these people who have a penchant for going to court, I want to advise, please, Mosh, can we slow down? Thank you.
All right, wonderful. Now, Bonacius, this one is to you. And I have a name of an official in your ministry, and I have the details, which I will not mention, but I'll give them to you after this, and I'll also come back to you for a response. Now, she says, my mom split her land into two with the intention of selling one part. In order for her to sell, she needed a two-piece title deed process to replace the one she had. And she says, I have been waiting from March until to date, and nothing has come back. When you come down, I'll give you the details, and then I'll come back to you for an answer. Now, I'll read 5 questions, and then I will ask Madam Pierce to make some comments, and I'll come back to Wallace for a roundup. My first question is, who owns the largest tracts of land in Kenya? Number 2 is, has the ministry been able to repossess any land that was acquired irregularly, allocated to politicians, churches, etc.? Number 3 is, coast counties have borne the brunt of the historical land injustices. How far is the ministry and the NLC in implementing these reforms? The next one is, how is the ministry dealing with several questions of double titling? And the other one is malpractices in land control boards, the case of Meru Land Board and others. Now, I'll let you chew on that as Madam Pierce makes a statement, and then I'll come back to you, Wallace, for a wind-up and for a response. Thank you, Madam Pierce.
Thank you for that intervention. I must say that the morning of the Langata primary school event was one of the darkest days that I've ever experienced in the ministry. And to answer your question, Wallace, it should never come to that it should take that children are involved and exposed. And one thing that has worried me, Wallace, now that you are asking, should it come to that, was the timing. Because schools had been delayed. Then they were opening on the day of the same day as Soweto uprising. So you tend to see that maybe somebody somewhere had a hand in it. Now, that piece of land, when you look at the documents, has had a rather interesting history, and there are also a lot of gaps in the information as well, to the extent that it's not really possible to quite conclude. At times it was given as public land, at times it was given as private developers, then it was taken back, then given back again to the private developers, and now here it is being used as school land. Our position as a ministry is that we are still addressing the matter, and we are going to revoke that title and give it to the school. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madam Pierce. I want to start taking final submissions. Mr. Suzuki will come to you because we do have another session that involves UPS as well. So starting with you, Peter, do you feel after this conversation with the intervention by Honorable Chege that Kihio Mwiri shall no longer be a hot knife in the body of you, the directors of that piece of land?
Thank you. In the current situation, if it is not resolved amicably, this problem will still persist. Not this, Titles have been issued, that is. But there is no land allocations. Nobody knows where his land is, though you have a title, a paper by the name of the title. See? It is past 1 year. CS can concede to this.
All right. Sorry, hold on, Bonacius. We'll come to you. We just need to wind this up. Irongo, you'll answer that question when it comes to you. Irongo, the question has been on not just school land, but other public utility land. Do you feel not necessarily that it has been resolved, but it's on its way to resolution?
I think the question is really, are we hopeful that going forward, are we, are we able to protect our public lands? And I think, for me, hope has always been a choice rather than an emotion. And I think we have to be hopeful, because in that lies the potential for a greater Kenya, for a more secure Kenya for the generations
But
that
informed
come.
hope, though?
In terms of the analysis, we are still very far in terms of just the public schools. And I think we've heard this already. 17% is just not a secure future for our schools. Let me not step over the response by the PS in terms of Langata. It was also a very dark day for me, not just simply because I also was tear gassed. And I think on the tear gassing of the children, we had a public apology from the Cabinet Secretary in charge of Interior. And I think we should accept that apology, that the security forces acted in the interest of the land grabber rather than in the interest of the school and in the public interest. And I think we should accept that. There's an inaccuracy in terms of Soweto. Soweto actually broke in 1976. July or June 16th, I think is the date. So the date was not coincidental. All that was coincidental was really the pain and the misery that was meted out to the children and some of us who came to support them. I think the last one is, the last comment I wanted to make is that I think the way forward in some ways is the digitization program. And I think it's been mentioned, the more that we're able to digitize and place the information in the public domain, so it is really clear where the beacons on every public utility is, then we will be able to safeguard those properties. And that work is not just the work of government. I think that work is the work of every citizen to make sure that all land that is in the public interest remains in the public interest and is utilized and invested in and enhanced in the public interest.
Eric, looking forward?
Yeah, three things. Just on the issue about the schools, I think we are talking here and we are saying that this can actually be done for free, but I think there is some expense that is involved in it, and possibly there is need for the ministry to work with the Institution of Surveyors of Kenya to see how we can actually be able to involve the private surveyors to ensure that the mapping of the schools can actually be done. And I think if that is done, then maybe within a year or so, we can ensure that we have mapped all the schools, and this is to the title standards. On the issue about digitization, I think there's a lot of investment that has been done already by the government in this particular area. We have the technology, we have the capacity, and I think we can be able to create a system that can be able to outlive us. Lastly, the issue of land is very emotive, and we need to educate ourselves that land is not the only investment that we can have.
Yes, exactly.
I think we also need to be able to drive the discussion away from land into other issues and leave land to the people who actually need the land, who are the farmers who need to be able to grow crops and land for recreation. So maybe we need to think about issues of land taxation. Maybe that can be a hot topic, but we need to be able to free up the land. If you go to Europe, you see the ordinary person does not really care about the land.
You have your house and you're okay with it.
Yes.
Mohamed Waziri, final thoughts?
I will sum up by answering three of the questions that were raised. One of it is, he was asking, has the ministry repossessed in land? I think the CS has mentioned that. We have revoked over 4,000 titles. The total acreage of that we have not yet given, but it's commendable in 3 years in a situation where none had happened before. And we shall be able to give the figures later. You also asked who owns the largest tracts of land in Kenya. Is a relative question. Communities own 67% of this land in this country. Private is about 19% and public is 14%. But these figures are dynamic. When we give out land, public land to others, this percentage shrinks. When we convert community to private, the figures will change. But those are not static figures. So the community owns the largest. We also have ranchers who also own large tracts of land, and then we have some institutions in this country which also own large tracts of land. I'll give two examples. Kenya Ports Authority and University of Nairobi are some of those largest landowners in this country. Then the case of historical injustice in the coast, I think we have done a lot. First of all, we did what he's asking for, public awareness. Throughout, since the commission was formed, I think Kenyans are more informed about land matters. They are more robust in their discussions because they understand what has been going on or what they have been missing. So in the coast, we have also had a lot of historical injustice cases which we have resolved Starting from the Waitiki one in Mombasa and Kisauni, we have resolved so many of them. In Mtwapa, in Kilifi, in Kwale, there are thousands of them that we have resolved.
All right, Professor Kamenyi.
Yeah, mine really is to thank this wonderful audience. I said from the word go, we are listening government. We have had complaints about Lake Naivasha, Elementaita. We have had Manu Shandaria. We have had our brother Evans Kidero. Kimwiri, I want him to know that yes, we are going to move in and identify the big cons anytime from now, by the way. And we were together the other day. I don't know why you are not telling him. Avandi, Iton Irongo, your concerns, wonderful, brother here. And all these issues about historical injustices. The bottom line, the litmus test is to implement these wonderful suggestions and interventions that you have made. And we shall do it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Kamenyi. Thank you very much to everyone. But this hasn't ended because Yvonne Okwara is preparing to come up here and handle some of the technical issues and also to continue this conversation. So Yvonne and Ted, over to you.
All right, thank you very much. We shall have a short video as we plan for the next intermission.
Alasi tupige makofi, kwani kwa shida gani? Asanteni.
Tumeissue karibu 3 million new title deeds, digitization of our records, making it easier for people to do business. It's digitally with the special features. You have never seen that before. You can do a search of the comfort of your office. We will not entertain people invading public or private land. Sisi hatutaki tena kusikia juu ya swala la ardhi. Tunataka kuhakikisha ya kwamba tumeleta jibu.
Thank you. All right, we can take back to our seats. We'd like to bring up our next panel, ladies and gentlemen. Now, ladies and gentlemen, remember this is a live event, and at every time we can receive any question, any comment, anywhere, and we'll be ready to answer it. I have a couple of questions which I will direct straight to particular people, because I'm told that there are questions which have been asked which we have not received straight answers. In this program, we're straight shooters, and we want the answer, and we want the answer now. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to bring up our next panel. And in this panel, let me please request to join us Architect Mariam El Mawi, who is our PS in the Ministry of Lands and Physical Planning. Abigail Mkolwe from the National Lands Commission. Faith Mora from Land Women in Grassroots, Kenya. Mwenda Makathimo from the Land Development and Governance Institute. Nick Nesbitt of IBM. And Dr. Lawrence Salau Esho will join us in the next panel together with Mushai Kuhinya. Ladies and gentlemen, as our panelists make it up, allow me to introduce our moderator for this next section. Please welcome Yvonne Okwara. Yvonne, welcome.
Thanks. Are you all right? You want to lower the seat?
And as promised, the gender rule has been met. I think we deserve a round of applause for that, just for that, if anything today. Not yet. Oh, no applause. Please forgive me. I apologize humbly.
It is the law.
Please, no, because I kept my word. That's why I need an applause. Thank you very much. Maybe can we play a video again as we try and adjust the seats a bit?
Yeah. There's a lever. There's a lever on the side of the seat. There's a lever on the side of the seat.
Tumeissue karibu 3 million new title deeds.
But you have to be seated.
Za hapo awali.
You have to sit on it.
Are you okay? Not exceed 1 million before the Jubilee government came into office. Come 2017, we shall have processed 3 billion title deeds on a scorecard.
Yeah.
You can give us a 9.5 because you have processed 2.4 billion. Easy atimiliki ya risi isawa isa digitally with special features. You have never seen that before. Digitalization of our records, making it easier for people to do business. This is the first change that is happening in the Ministry of Lands for the last 100 years. The new generation deeds will incorporate details such as county location of the land, as well as security features such as barcodes and inscriptions similar to those found on currency notes. The data will be stored electronically as well as in hard copy.
Within the Commission, and since we are in charge of public land, we develop what is called the Public Land Information Management Systems, which now the Commission will go ahead to capture the data of public land in this country and digitize it.
Many of the fraudsters, they thrive on our use of manual records.
We have a well laid down infrastructure within the country. We have what we call the Government Core Connection Network, CCN, which has spanned almost the whole of the country. Somebody who wants to do research will not necessarily need to travel from Oitoktok to come to Kajiado, no? It will be so easy.
You can do a search at the comfort of your office.
Our staff have already been psyched. Actually, everybody's tired of this paperwork.
Digitization has made me run my job. There are no more dust. There are no more carrying of heavy binders. So at least, I'm very happy.
We will not entertain people invading public or private land. We will not do that. For all manner of excuses. Second, people misuse power to acquire land illegally or irregularly. And that something must be done about it. That is what that law addresses. So that, for example, if you are given a community, if your land was grabbed, or even as an individual, land was grabbed because somebody used their power or their possession to take that land, we are going to address that. Sisi hatutaki tena kusikia juu ya swala la ardhi. Tunataka kuhakikisha ya kwamba tumelete jibu.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, and thanks for your patience. This session will deal a lot with solutions and moving forward and some of the things that are in place that we can work on. And we might revisit some of the questions from the previous session because it's important to have clarity on certain issues. We'll get to those in a moment. But I think the biggest question is about going forward, the relationship between the National Land Commission and the Ministry of Lands. I think that's a good place to start because once we saw the commission coming into place, there have been these wrangles about one trying to take the mandate of the other. So I think I start with you, Abigail. Where are we now?
Thank you very much, Yvonne, for that question. I must say that right now, the Commission and the Ministry, we are at a good place. The relationship has improved tremendously. And I must commend the current Cabinet Secretary, Prof. Kaimenyi. When Prof. Kaimenyi came on board, we were able to meet. We were able to agree on, we had about 45 contentious issues. We agreed on 42 of them. even in line with the Supreme Court ruling. And actually, Professor was at the point of handing over the functions the way it's supposed to be done in accordance with the law, only for Omtata and others to go to court to get a court order to stop the cabinet secretary from handing over the functions to the commission. But I can tell you, since with Professor Kaimenyi, we are doing very well, we are working very well together. We are waiting again for the issues of the court order. We are now waiting once again for the outcome of the court case. You can imagine. But we are working very well together right now. And we are moving forward. We are very clear on what we need to do. We are very clear on everybody's mandate. And also the coming in place of the Land Act Amendment 2016. It has also gone a long way in solving that issue. So we just wish the courts would leave us alone to do our work. We know what needs to be done, and we're working very well together.
So the issue of state interference in the mandate of the National Land Commission? Madam PS, yes.
Thank you very much. I wouldn't say there is any state interference in the mandate of the National Land Commission. The mandate is spelled out in the laws, and especially now with the conclusion of both the Supreme Court and the amendments in the land laws, there is a lot of clarity right now. And on the same issue, we have both formal and informal engagements with the National Land Commission. Now we have structured meetings. We have launched the National Land Information Management System together as the two ministries. We are working together on the public schools. We are working together in the titling processes. We are also participating in a number of their reviews of dispositions and grants. All in all, it's a much happier environment, and also seeking clarity of the steps that members of the public really want to know.
All right, so all is looking rosy here between the two. Wenda, is this something that you agree with from the sort of outside looking in? Is this the same experience for you?
Well, when there were problems, we cited three sources of the problems. The first one was legal, where there was no clarity and mandates were shared and there were overlaps in the allocation of mandates. So the Land Amendments Act 2016 has resolved much of that. In fact, the issues we addressed on the legal side have been resolved, and we are happy. So where there were functions where the commission was given half the job and the ministry half the job, now the mandate sits with one institution, and it will be known how to seek accountability from that institution. The other issue was administrative, the matter of staffing and the matter of assets and how they were shared. So that it is only the institutions themselves who can say whether they have shared the assets and the whatever. From outside, we may not say that so much. And the other one was relational. I mean, some working chemistry between the officers, and it is them who can say, because we from outside we were saying we know one government. We want to be holding government accountable together. We don't want them washing their linen out there. At least the chemistry seems okay. Now, from our side, we want delivery beyond the chemistry.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely, because chemistry is one thing, but delivery of services is another. Talk to us, Menda, about harmonizing the land legislations and what we've been able to do so far, from your perspective, and what you think that does, for that.
From my perspective, or from our perspective, as those who seek services, the harmonization has been done up to about 80%. Because the Land Registration Acts are done, the Community Land Act was done, the National Land Commission Act was done. Now the issue that is pending were the laws that relate to rating and taxation. The ones of Valuation for Rating Act, the Rating Act, those ones have not been harmonized, and those still bring issues. The planning law that was not passed by Parliament still brings problems. That's why the mandate of oversight given to the Commission may not yet be done in a very smooth manner until the Planning Act is passed. Now, beyond the acts, there are regulations that are required to make those acts work efficiently. For instance, the Community Land Act requires regulations that will say
how the committee is formed, the gender issues, the terms of the committee, and those are the things that will make the implementation smooth. The National Land Commission Act also requires regulations. The Land Act also requires regulations, so that the things that cannot be defined by statute are finished. And that is something that is slowing the implementation and requires to be fast-tracked, so that the good provisions of the Constitution, the good provisions of the statutes are brought to reality in terms of delivery. Sometimes when details are not very well defined by regulations, officers will still fight.
Right, regardless of chemistry at the top. You wanted to add, Madam PS? Or yeah, because I wanted to just move on very quickly to the gender issue, because that's what Mwenda talked about. And it's great that, you know, the 2010 Constitution enshrines the rights of women to own land, but it's still a costly and complicated process for women, especially those who are living in the rural area. So maybe you could tell us about some of the work that's being done, and whether you're seeing the effect of this on the ground. A lot of this we're seeing even here from the video we just saw. Things are happening online, but for the lady in the rural area, you know, that is something that would be largely inaccessible for them, wouldn't it?
Thank you. And I also want to touch on the question you just asked about the relationship between the ministry and the commission. You see, I work for an organization called Roots Kenya, and what we do in our lifetime is to bridge policy to the practice, ensuring that the women in the communities and the community themselves understand the policy and the legal framework. So you can imagine for us at the time when there was no talking between the National Land Commission and the ministry, we do not know what to say, but I would say this has advanced. On the ground, I think people can see that the ministry and the National Land Commission are working together. I will tell you, in the last 2 years...
In what way specifically?
In the last 2 years, let me tell you this. In the last 2 years, we've been able to have a meeting with the commissioners and the chairman and this, the cabinet secretary and the permanent and the PS on the same table, bringing grassroots women from the community to tell what has not been going on. Definitely, and right, definitely for the woman at the ground, they don't care about the relationship. What they care is that they access the land, and not just accessing the land, they also are able to control and maintain that land, which is a difficult thing.
It is. So talk to us about how this working chemistry that we're hearing about has now helped that woman in the rural area in terms of acquiring, accessing and controlling land.
I think we see this as the right environment for the women to do this. I'll give 2 examples. The ministry gave the opportunity for the country to form the land control boards. And because of that, and since we work with grassroots women, we were able to mobilize grassroots women who we have trained over years to be part of these land control boards. So I would say for a fact that the 30% of the women that are sitting in this land control board, they are not going there as flower girls. They are going there with substance. They understand the legal framework. They understand the constitution. They know what they are bringing. And I think that for us was very, very important to get the right environment. But there are also gaps, because when women went out there to apply to become members of the land control board, the first thing they were asked, you show that you own land in this area. And we forget that women in the first place don't have that title to show that they own land. We had to go and lobby a lot. And I can tell you there are many women that would have been functional that were left out. And they could not become members of this land control board because they could not show the county commissioners or the deputy county commissioners that they own land in that particular area. And I think that's a huge gap. The second thing I would say,
should we start thinking about that requirement really?
I think we should. And there are some of the things that as we set these parameters of how we should participate in the management of land in this country, we need to think about the already existing gender inequality. That we forget, as we said, and we think that everybody has the capacity and has what it takes to participate. The second, I would think the last panel was talking a lot about the public land. And I think we have forgotten who suffers most when public land is grabbed or is taken illegally. It's actually the women who live in poverty, who we call the grassroots women, those in rural areas and those who are in urban slums, because it is there that access the public schools, it's there that access the hospitals, it's there that access those burial spaces. And when they are grabbed, they don't have them. But what have we done? We have treated these women as beneficiaries of our projects and programs. And we have not seen the role and the contribution they make. So what did we do after the National Land Policy was enacted in 2009? We decided we are not going to wait for the National Land Commission to be set to be able to do an inventory of the public land. We thought the Constitution is very clear about the public participation and the gender equality therein. And so we decided to demonstrate how can the community be in the leadership of developing this public inventory. And we went to Lari Sub-County as a model. I will tell you, as we sit, all the public land in Lari Sub-County has been mapped by the grassroots communities.
Okay.
Women in leadership.
Right, and that's
as contributors.
As contributors, not just necessarily as beneficiaries.
No.
And that's a good point to just take a pause, and we'll come back to that in terms of just showing leadership, how it can be done. Nick, I want to bring you into this because we've heard complaints even from the private sector as well. Manu Chandari is complaining about just land in this country, and particularly those in the private sector, and how you're able to know and navigate. And we'll come to Madam PS in a moment to talk about that land valuation index and how that would just, help in terms of moving forward with the projects. But what are your thoughts on that, from that sector?
Thank you. Yes, I think when you ask me that question, there's one word that comes to mind, which is the word trust. And I'm approaching this from wearing three hats. One as somebody who owns land. Second, as in my role at IBM, leading the processes, and third, as a director in KEPSA. And if I start there as a director in KEPSA, some of the biggest challenges that we hear from investors is about land and about trusting everything that happens in land. And when I look at my role at IBM, we have spent a lot of time over the last 2 years under the ease of doing business, helping the government to understand how to raise the rankings, and we've moved 40 places in the last 2 years. As part of that process, it meant fully understanding the 48, 49 different processes of the Ministry of Lands and trying to understand how to shorten them. It takes about 69 days in the Ministry of Lands to transfer a title, according to the World Bank and the statistics they did. That can easily be dropped by 25-30%. The team with the PS in her IT, in her different processes and so on, you can see the commitment that they're very, very, very willing to drive that change. So where does this trust come from? The trust comes from understanding several things. It comes from understanding let's just say from three different people. There are the citizens who need to understand that what land they have, what the status of the land transfer is, whether it's being transferred from person A to person B, the change of use, whether it's being issued a title and so on. They need to understand and trust the process. The other group that needs to understand are the people in the ministries or even in the Land Commission, to understand that the person before them in the process and the person after them in the process is doing the right thing and there's full transparency. And probably the third constituents who need to understand that everything is going well are the people at the top, the stakeholders, the people at the top of government who can answer questions like who are the largest landholders,
right.
And it's just their fingertips.
Yeah.
So to bring all of that together, the way I look at it with my IBM hat as a technical person is it all comes down to digitization. And it is this concept that we have, that we see up here today, that a title is this piece of paper But really, we need to, in a way, push ourselves and intellectualize it a little and say the title is actually a digital record that represents three things. The first thing it represents is the obligations of that piece of land. What are the land rents? What are the land rates? And that should be available 24/7. You should always know, have you paid or have you not? Simple. The second thing that the title needs to represent, and that it does, is tell me the details about this land. How many acres, the beacons, the global coordinates, etc. And then the third thing that a land title has to represent is what are the transactions that have happened on this land. So once you realize it's digital and it can be stored digitally, you can then change those attributes of those three categories that I just mentioned. You can change them, but then what's really important is you keep a track of who changed it, at what time, and who passed it from person A to B, and then you can give indications on where that piece of land is in the whole process, how long it has taken, and so on. You do that, you create that transparency. It is very straightforward on how to do it. You then create the trust for the citizens, the managers, and the leaders of this country. And that's what we can do.
So I heard you saying trust is important, and in terms of being able to know who owns the largest tracts of land. And this is a question from the previous session that some people felt perhaps the professor wasn't very forthcoming. This land we have in public and private. And some say this is an important question, especially for Kenyans who are watching. Are you able to elaborate a little bit more on this question for those that feel that it hasn't been answered conclusively? Who owns the largest tracts of land in Kenya? Madam PS.
Okay, I get the hard questions, and rightly so.
Rightly so.
If I may perhaps say a little bit on what has been discussed, as we have first. Relationship issues have improved tremendously, not just with the National Land Commission, but with the sector. I want to, at this point, look at this room. The sector is so well represented, and these people have come here out of their own interest. They are the ones who said, I want to be there. And Mwenda Makathimo, for instance, is part of a group called the Non-State Actors, who for around 3 or 4 years or so did not have access to the ministry at all. But now we have reopened relations with them, and we have meetings with the non-state actors, and in those non-state actors they have come together with the ministry, and we've started working together. Now that's very important in land. In that land, it's not just the government and the ministry that can work alone. There is a role to be played by just about everybody. The CS had put it a little bit more harder in the first session when he said, look at yourself and what is it that you think you're doing or you're not doing if you're passive about it. Now, they had worked on the regulations and concluded them by 2014. As I came into the ministry, we even extended some of their time so that they could deal with some of the harder issues such as land for foreigners and foreign investments. However, with the amendments, we had to wait for the conclusion of that exercise and also about the court issues. Having concluded the land amendments and the land registration and the new Community Land Act, which has been assented at the end of August, indeed, we are fast-tracking the regulations, and they are intended to be concluded by December. There won't be that much work to do, only the areas that are conflicting, that have changed in the amendments. So there's happy news coming. The regulations are about to be concluded, and that's also an area that we're working together with the National Land Commission to get that done.
All right.
On the women issue, I want to say one thing. It's a very exciting time for women. For the first time ever, we are actually seeing women coming into the space and starting to claim their land rights. We were part of an activity that was led by Action Aid, and this was Kilimanjaro Women. Kilimanjaro Women was taking women from all over Africa. It was a caravan that was ending in Kilimanjaro, and we were together with them, and they launched the Charter on Rural Women Land Rights. Rural women, okay? And then in the urban areas, we have the women in real estate who are also coming forward and are starting to claim what it is they need to do also in the urban areas. So And when she's talking about the public land management too, we are very proud of our women because they have gone to Washington, they have gone to Colombia, they've gone to UN Habitat, and they've talked about this public land management tool. And because of that, I believe it was actually agreed in UN Habitat to agree to community-based solutions to register public land is now acceptable under the new UN Habitat decisions that came out of Ecuador the other day.
Okay.
I just wanted to interject and say something
But before that, there's the question in the room, the big elephant in the room.
Okay.
Which I think we must answer. And you've talked about the great working relationship, non-state actors like Mwenda who can access you.
Yes.
But for the public who are watching us today, one of the ways of building trust with them is the simple thing of saying, let's be open about it.
Yes.
Who owns the largest tracts of land?
Now, this has been a surprise to me as well, because I had a similar question as I was coming into the ministry. First of all, the land distribution sits as follows. We have public land is actually the smallest portion. It's 14% of all the land that is owned. Then after that, 15% is private land. And then the rest of that is community land. So if your question is in the private land, who owns the largest?
I think that's what
I
Kenyans would
believe
like to know.
the simple answer would be most like the conservancies and the ranches are the ones that hold the largest tracts of lands here in Kenya. That's what is beginning. However, we would be able to give you a far much more accountable and complete answer when we conclude digitization.
Okay.
Because the digitization process is now beginning to give us real values of exactly ownership and acreage as well. And out of the 13 registries that we have done so far, all the 13 registries, all records are now in e-records. They are scanned, whether they are good, they are bad, they are irregular, they are all available on an e. But what we are going through is a process of verification, and we have concluded verification in about 8 of them. Okay. But straight off the bat, I would say that the conservancies, the ranches, what was known as the white settler type of farms and so on, that's where the largest tracts of land are sitting in this country.
Okay. You're dying to chip into this one.
Not that one. I was dying to say something. I was dying to say something about the National Land Information Management System that we are working together with the ministry. Before the amendments, the development and management of the National Land Information Management System was a mandate under the Commission. But now, following the amendments, the Commission is now mandated to do a public land information management system, which we are working on. But for good reason, the Commission and the ministry, we are working very well together on a joint effort to do this, because the Commission had established a secretariat to do the National Land Information Management System, and it is headed by the best in the Republic, called Professor Kuria. I think Professor Kuria is here. He's the best in the Republic. There's none like him. And we have already established our GIS lab. We have our GIS lab in place. We actually did launch a pilot with the cabinet minister when he was new in the office. We launched that, I think it was in May. And right now we are developing now the databases. We have already digitized about 5,000 maps in total. So we are working together with the ministry, because how this works is that some of the data that we need is with the ministry, the registration data, the survey data, planning data. In other words, we must get all these data sources and link them together in order to be able to get a National Land Information Management System in place. So we are actually moving forward, and for us as a commission, we believe that this is one of the best things that we can do for the people of Kenya. If we want to get rid of fraud, if we want to deal with the land grabbers, we want to deal with the fraudsters, let us get a National Land Information Management System in place. We know how much it's going to cost. We know how long it's going to take to get it in place. For us, ours is to beseech the government to give us all the financial resources we need so as to get rid of these fraudsters who are giving us a hard time in the land sector.
Okay, Esther had talked about them doing an inventory of public land in Larry. So I want to ask you, Madam PS, how far are we with an inventory of public land, as a whole? Do we now have one? Are we sort of taking from that example and making it national as it should be?
Okay, as we said, we are working together. That is actually a question for my sister here in the public land information, and that's what she has just responded to. That the launch started about in April with a 6-month dry run, like a pilot, and from the results of that pilot, they will be able to extend it nationally. And what we also did together is standards, the regulation of standards and guidelines, which involved public participation and sector participation as well. Maybe after she has spoken on that, I might say something about how we're developing this trust. Yes.
And I know Manda also wants to say something. So
about the audit, the audit on the public land in the Republic, what the Commission has done since coming into the office 2013, what we've done is that, like we said, we've been able to map out all the schools in the Republic of Kenya, though as we were told earlier, they've not been surveyed. But again, like I said, as a commission, we are very clear on what needs to be done. If you give us the money, we can get all this work done within a very short time. Finances are a very big deficiency of finances is a big problem, but we know what needs to be done. We've already mapped all the schools.
Yeah. Well, all the stakeholders in terms of finance are here, including
So
the head of
give
state,
us
the cabinet secretary,
give us
and
the money.
PS.
We know what needs to be done. Give us the money. We will get these schools titles out, the school titles out in a very short while. Another thing we've done, we've been able to contact all the state agencies in all government ministries. All of them have given us an inventory of their land and their status of land. In other words, what they've done is that they tell us what they own, the status of that land, whether it is grabbed or not grabbed. But even where it is grabbed, as a commission, as my chairman said earlier, we do recover these particular pieces of land. So that database has been developed, and we are still in the process of recovering the same. Something I want to say about the recovery of some of the grabbed lands.
And very quickly,
for example, we've been able to revoke Karura Forest. We've recovered the whole of Karura Forest. We've revoked all the titles on Karura Forest. Eastleigh Market. We've recovered Eastleigh Market for the market women of Nairobi. So for us, we're just waiting for the governor to go and demolish those people who are building there. Because we've been telling those people to remove, the title is revoked, they continue building. So governor, go and approach them. That land is public land, they must get out.
And please let us know when you're going to do that. We'd love to cover that in the news.
For also the roads, we've been able to recover a lot of titles. For example, the Outer Ring Road, for good reason, we didn't even pay a lot of people on that Outer Ring Road. We did recovery. We recovered public land. We just told the people, move out, move back, give back the 7 meters that we need. So we've been able to recover quite a bit. And like my chairman said, starting Tuesday, actually, we are looking at Woodley. We are now going to Woodley. We are looking to recover Woodley for the county government. We are looking to recover the riparian land. We are starting on Tuesday. Please, want to invite all of you. Come for our public hearings. You see how reviews are done. It is a very effective way of dealing with land disputes. The difficult land disputes, we take just a month. What makes it difficult is just getting documentation to support our claim, because everybody goes to court. But otherwise, it's very easy to deal with those issues. Okay. So we are good.
Yeah, I'd like to give a chance for the rest to contribute to some of it.
Thank you very much. You know, we do a scorecard that asks the citizens, what is the ministry doing? What is the National Land Commission doing? And we've been getting very negative reports, but we are at least happy that the first thing we were told, there are some members of staff who have been at one station for 20 years. And we told the ministry, please move them, because they are the ones perpetuating corruption. At least we are happy about 300, 400 have been moved. But those who have been found with other issues, we would be happier to see disciplinary steps taken against them. On the matter of land information management, we are at least, from our side, we'll give them a fair score, not good, not excellent.
Yeah.
Why? It is the basics. The registries have been cleaned up, which is a good step. The digitization has been done, which is a first step. But we need an integrated land information management system. And on this one, I don't blame the ministry, I don't blame the commission.
Who do you blame?
Treasury, please provide the resources, like has been done in the communications, the Huduma Center. Make it a project, please. This is what will unlock the wealth of this country. Private sector will be satisfied, all business people will be satisfied. Make it a project and it can be done. The other bit that the citizens have been talking about is on the question of the queues in the registries and all that, and they've been complaining. But we have noticed that there's a system that has been introduced of giving people cards and all that, and that's a good administrative effort. We don't just criticize. They have done well in that respect. One feedback we have got everywhere is that the land laws and the policies are very complicated. The ordinary citizens do not understand. For people to participate, they have to understand where the services are, what their rights on the new laws are. So we would also want to see public education so that people can be able to know simply, what do I do? What do I do to resolve the matter, so that the blame game ends. People know where to go and people can receive their services efficiently. On the matter of courts, I know judges have been appointed, but the courts, beyond judges, and judges are very powerful, they decide when to work and when to go to the stations. But the registries that the judges use are more manual than what the lands ministry used to be. The files disappear there, and the court clerks disappear with the files, and the matters keep circulating. So the registries of the courts need to be digitized, so that the digitization is not just in National Land Commission, it is in where disputes are being resolved.
It's across the board, and that is the feedback. I'll come to you in just a moment, so just to hold that thought, because we haven't had from Nick for a while. That's the feedback that Mwenda is giving us from the citizens in terms of, land rights. Nick, from the private sector, as an investor, what are some of the challenges? What's the feedback? And what do you think are the solutions towards getting investors more trusting, and to say, if we're going to make developments on certain land, that, we won't come up with certain issues months or years to come?
Well, first off, I'd say that the challenges that investors face are essentially the same from the bottom to the top. How you get resolved, how you resolve those issues changes. I guess when you're at the top, coming down to the bottom, it's perhaps easier. But the challenges are around the sanctity of the title. Challenges are around understanding where you are in the process. The challenges are around how to move it along in the process. Along the way, we were talking at our table there are many challenges that happen around the fake title deeds. Right? And for banks to be able to trust that this title that they've been given is a big challenge, and it is not slowing down, which means that it threatens the mortgage industry and so on, right? So, the complexity, as I was just mentioning, about how to deal with land also frightens people. If you look at all of these buildings being built, all of these houses being built, the number of mortgages in the country are 25,000, and you wonder how that's being done.
Yeah.
What would happen if people could unlock the capital in their houses to be able to get a mortgage, to be able to get a second mortgage on the house, to fund their education, to fund their transport, to fund a new business? There's a lot of work that needs to happen there. But if the banks, the lending institutions can trust the titles that are being lent to them, and if people can understand the process of how to access their capital, I think that would go a long way to increasing investor confidence and really help this economy to achieve the goals.
Good, and that's a great point to talk about how far we are with the development of the new titles.
Yes, thank you very much. The journey of digitization has been a journey of sweat, blood and tears. It's a long and arduous journey. First, it started with us being able to look at our situation as is. And I tell you, it was a very interesting situation. Our records and the logistics are really tough in this country. We have registries where the storage is actually an old container, a container that has been picked from the port, and that is where the records are being stored. Some of them are in the tin huts, and some of them have at least nice, decent brick and spaces and so forth. Now, 25 registries were cleaned up in putting those records in order. And that means we are able to tell where the gaps are, where the duplicates and the triplicates are, and so on and so forth. What we're working on now is how to be informed formally if indeed your file is missing. There is a number of files which are not available. And there are places where it's quite encouraging. The early results, what has it shown so far? And maybe it's too early to give an announcement, but I will be able to share what we have been able to see so far. Out of the 13 registries that we have scanned and digitized so far, 8 have been concluded. 4 are already online, and another 4 will go online as well. What are they telling us? It was very, very encouraging to find that out of the total number of parcels held, the conflicts in them most of the times was less than 5%, which means that the irregularity is not in the information that is being held. The irregularity is in human beings manipulating the information to their interest and to their advantage. We had 2 registries, Eldoret being one of them, where it went up to 12%. And we can actually attribute that to a sort of post-conflict kind of situation, where there was a lot of movement, demographic, and so on and so forth. Now, if a registry like Kisumu, which is notorious for multiple titles and fake titles, but if our documents are showing us that in Kisumu, because after we have 3 steps. First of all, we scan all the documents. Then we take them through 3 levels of verification. First of all, it is technical, just to look at the data, you know, the sizes and so on and so forth, and then a second level of verification. If a registry like Kisumu is showing you that much of what is held there is actually secure data, and that is what us as a country, on conclusion of this registration exercise or digitization exercise, we can look forward to, because we will be holding a live search certificate. As one of the people spoke here in the morning, it shouldn't need to go through another due diligence. We shall be holding a live search certificate at any time, and now it is a robust, it uploads the information every time there is a transaction. There is a demand in the country for green cards. We are phasing out manual green cards. We want the public to support us on this. The green card has to be digital. Please don't keep asking for those manual green cards, because the manual green cards are ones that are pulled out and another one is put in. Right now, it is not possible because we have already scanned all of them, whether they are good or bad. Now it's not possible to bring another green card.
All right, Esther?
Now,
sorry, are you done?
Yeah, and then on the issue of say the land valuation index, which you talked about earlier, that there is a bill before Parliament, and for the first time now the country is also developing its own land valuation index. That has been done previously by the private sector. It is expected to at least give you a sound indication. The trend has been that the land prices were going up by about 5%, but immediately a road comes into the area or development comes into the area, it shoots up to about 40%. So infrastructure and development is very key to all of this being done. And Mwenda, we would also like to see not just what the ministry has done, the National Land Commission has done, we would also like to see what all the other players in the sector has done, as well as the public. Thank you very much.
All right. Esther?
Yeah, I think there are 2 areas of inequality that have persisted in this country in terms of gender inequality. One, it's on land ownership and control. And I think we need to come to life to that and be able to deal with it. We have been hearing since morning about the celebrations we must take in terms of what the government has done. But if you listen to all the statistics, none of these statistics is gender disaggregated. So even in all these titles, you cannot tell how many women actually access this title or own this title, how many women do have control of this land. And it's something that we need to move to the next step. We just had a call last week from the women of Moi Basin, where we are just about to extract coal, if at all we are going to extract coal. This is an area we've tried to work on. And one of the things that women there, they were very unhappy for any titling of that land, and until that we had understood who owns that land. Then they wanted to know how much of the land that they owned, and they wanted to do a community process where they determined how much of the land they owned as a community, as women, before the titling is done. Now the titling is being done, and they are very unhappy lot. And I think this is something. And I think we also need to go not only checking how much land is in the hands of women, how much land is in the hands of men. We need to put in place projects and programs that ensure that women own and accumulate more land. And this is important because if we have affirmative action in political participation, we need affirmative action on land ownership in this country. Otherwise, if we leave it to the market, we're going to continue in the same way.
All right.
And already our government, let me just say, our government...
But how would you go about affirmative action in the ownership of land? Just some suggestions.
Yes, I'll give you, because this we are actually offering ourselves to the government of Kenya. The government of Kenya is part of the agreement of the African Union that by 2025 they are committed to see that 30% of the land is in the hands of the women. First, we must be able to map how much land is disintegrated. And community, women must be able to say, this is the land that we know we have. But
I'm seeing some interesting reactions from the audience, so that should tell you the issue of affirmative action, women,
as a question of policy, if you allow me.
Okay, let's just have him weigh in.
Yeah, from a point of law, you cannot also take land from one gender and give it to the other, because the Constitution, it's a right in the Bill of Rights. Everybody is protected. Their rights are protected, all of them, whether man or woman. So the issue that they raise is that if there are policy issues or legal issues stopping women from engaging positively, and as at now, I think the Constitution doesn't put any barring on any person. The laws that have been done do not bar any person, and people
However,
have also...
it is not an even playing field for men and for women,
it's not just about...
so it's not about barring them.
It's not about regulations.
Are not economically empowered,
the point of helping the women, the point of helping the women is for confidence, for them to know their rights, and for administrative justice.
Which is what, Esther, you're doing?
Administrative justice.
That is right. In a very simplicity way.
Okay.
I think it's so simplistic. We think it's buying land and giving to the women.
So you're not saying that land owned by men should be given to women?
We are saying, if, for example, there is an opportunity for a process where land is being adjudicated so that individuals can get that land, we are saying, in terms of the people that are making that decision, we must see women and men participating in that decision. That's affirmative action. Let's not be very simplistic about gender issues.
You can see...
We are also saying, in terms of who has these records, who control these records, and that's why this community public land mapping was very essential.
Wonderful. Let me help this out, Madam Pierce. Let me help this out so that we have a balance. I think the male voice also needs to be heard a bit. And
I think Wenda has also represented
the male should be clapping for me because now it's our turn. Yeah, tumekaliwa ya kutosha. All right, let me just maybe shift the conversation a bit, and I want to have a small discussion here with P.S. Nyakera, and then I'll go to the legislators because they also play a big role, and but we also want to hold them accountable to a couple of things which they will. Engineer Nyakera, please, P.S. Sorry, about acquisition of public land for national development. Just explain to us the whole metrics around that.
No, thank you very much. I think in terms of acquisition of land, and which is with the new amendment to the bill, which we are seeing, the issues we've been having is really about the speculation as well as access of the land. If we take, for example, the SGR from Mombasa to Nairobi, while it has cost us about 327 billion shillings for construction, land has also cost about 10% of that, another 33 billion shillings. And then when you look at, for example, Malindi, the point when we say that we'll expand the airport in Malindi, the land price, also the compensation went up to about 4 billion in terms of from what we were given versus about 2 billion that would be the cost of compensation of the construction. And we can go on and on, even when you're looking at Lapset, just looking at the cost of acquisition of land will therefore, if not tamed, impact negatively on infrastructure development. And that's why we're very happy with what the Ministry of Land is working on to bring down, to regularize that, the prices of the same. And one of looking at the bill and what the index will do, one of them is the fact that it will bring down speculation. So as soon as a corridor has been marked out, then the price on that, there'll be a period when that price cannot is fixed, and also will expedite the payment to the people who are being compensated. Then there's a clearer process and also transparent in terms of how compensation will actually be done, and who is paid, what time, and also, as I had said before, the amount. And then, of course, there is the provision for in terms of the eminent, as you say, the eminent domain, so that as soon as a corridor has been demarcated, then we can immediately start working on it. We get access, and then the payment and compensation can come as a time as stipulated within the law. So I think this is it's a challenge that we have to face. We need to find probably even start using the land for land compensation more, because then that is easier. Government has, as you say, the 14%, and other institutions which can also give land for that for compensation. Thank you.
All right, Ted, sorry, just allow me while we still have the PS and we're talking about these big infrastructure projects. So just talk to us about the balance, because the country definitely needs these big infrastructure projects, but having that without undermining, community rights and public interest. I mean, I know you've talked a lot about, land valuation and compensation, but, there's always that tug of war, isn't there, between these big infrastructure projects and community rights. Could you talk to us about the balance, how you strike that balance?
I think probably at the heart of it is public interest should always override private interest. So I think that's really at the heart of it, but not necessarily saying that then we take away the rights as defined under the Constitution. So I think the fact that removing speculators, for example, is critical, because it's not people who are adding any value to that land. If you also look at the issue of squatters, we are increasingly getting professional squatters on public land, especially once people know that an infrastructure initiative will be coming to that corridor or that area. So I think the regulations should be created or are being created to have both working, having the interest of the individual and the community, but also the interest of the country, which is through infrastructure development, being held high.
On that one, perhaps I can share with you some of the measures we've taken. In the past, we noticed that when they were designing infrastructure projects, they will go and do with private surveyors and so on, and then bring it to the ministry for ratification. And that has always been a rather difficult process. Now what we are doing is that we are combining the government survey teams and land information and titling and registration teams and the NLC teams together with the project teams, which means that in the initial route map, and we have done this rather well with the SGR, and also we are working on that with the LabSet, the initial route map is taken into consideration to be as least intrusive as possible, not just to people and also to the environment. And then after that, we have documentation of both registered and unregistered persons, and that is now in the Constitution and in the law, that you must consider even those who do not have a registration to title. And in that area, the National Land Commission also works for quite a considerable amount of time on the ground with the communities, with the politicians, to look at a best fit type of solution. In some instances, relocation has been necessary. In some instances, monetary compensation and land-for-land compensation. The routing has been able to also for us to avoid, for instance, resources such as water and wells and other types of resources which are needed by the community. Now, if you interfere with that, the community will also be affected. So these are some of the measures that we're taking to ensure that at least the project that is going into the area. Again, the projects have also been somewhat magnanimous. They have gone to the communities and asked them what else they also wish to have. So they've invested in wells, they've invested in other health centers and other kinds of facilities for the communities. Yes.
Thank you very much, Madam PS. And for this, and for the want of time, I will just request that I come to the legislative table. We'll do a quick round, and then we'll take it home with a roundup so that we're able to finish up this program. I'll start with Mheshimiwa Waititu, just very quickly and short, because I know you have to leave, and then we'll move on.
My first issue is with the PS, together with the National Land Commission, is about Kenari Settlement Scheme. Those people are given titles in 1988, some 28 years ago, but their green cards were blocked at Kiambu Control Board, Land's office, such that they are not able to transfer their land, they cannot take loans from the banks, and this issue was handled recently by the CS, and he tells me that the matter is already complete and you are soon going to unblock the green cards. Can you please tell us when you are going to do that, Mr. CS? Because I came to the CS office and he told me that the PS is handling the matter, and I think the people out there are waiting, because I told them that sooner or later they are going to get their green cards unblocked. My second issue goes to the issue of land control boards. It's a good idea. We have new people in our land control boards, but our biggest problem right now is that the agendas of the control boards should be advertised should be in the notice boards of the chiefs 1 week before they are discussed, because our biggest problem right now in our rural areas is people selling lands secretly from their families. But if there's the agenda that is going to be discussed in a week's time is put on the notice board of the local chiefs, the families will know that their land is being sold and they will come and block. But right now, as it is, the sellers, even sometimes the family members, go and approach the officials in the control board and they do it secretly. I would wish that that condition of advertising and putting on the notice board of the chiefs is effected, and it is done in 1 week before the transaction is done. Another issue, Mr. Chairman and CS, there's this issue of fraudsters colluding with the ministry officials to subdivide some people's land without their knowledge. I have one case of one who has been a professor at the Nairobi University, Professor Ajong. He had a 5-acre piece of land at Registries. Then that piece of land was subdivided. The documents were changed at the Ministry of Lands. He still has the original title, but the land has now been subdivided to other people, 10 of them, and the Mzee is an old man. He's in court suffering, and I approached the ministry officials to restore the documents of the old man, and they refused. My view is, if there is any illegal transfer of somebody's land, and he brings to the notice board, and he comes to the ministry has an obligation to restore the original status of that land. You don't need to go to court. Because like now, why do you have to go to court while the documents that were tampered with were in the custody of the ministry? Isn't it? It is the ministry which should immediately restore the original status of the owner of the land. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mheshimiwa Munuve.
Thank you very much. I've sat here and listened keenly to all these matters titled. I come from a constituency where, and I thank my brother, the Cabinet Secretary and the PS, for having come to Mwingi North to issue the first titles in May this year. The titles that have been done in Mwingi North would cover probably about 2% of the land issues. As the population increases in Mwingi North and everywhere else, because Kambas do both agriculture and pastoralism, land pressures are starting to show. On Saturday, we buried a widow called Mrs. Musili, who it is suspected was killed by a neighbor who wanted to expand that land because that land has no title. And as long as she doesn't exist, nothing would stop the neighbors from annexing the land. Ironically, Mr. Musili was killed 20 years ago, herding his livestock. He was actually taken with his livestock, and we have never buried him because we don't know what happened to him. Now, what I would like to find out from my brother, the Cabinet Secretary and the PS, is how quickly you can expedite the process of titling. Whereas it doesn't stop land from being alienated, it does at least give some stopgap measure. It does restrict the level of interference that can happen either within the community and also within the family. Otherwise, you're going to get a lot more conflicts. Right now, and I was talking to, right now we have a lot of environmental degradation in my constituency. We bought a Kora National Park in Mwingi North. That has now become the Wild West, where everybody comes and cuts indigenous trees and make charcoal, which is sold in Nairobi. Every government officer, from the police to the chief, everybody is on the take. I attempted at one time to going to the road at night to arrest these people with their trucks. And I was told, this is a cartel, John. You cannot become the policeman. So I've stopped. But that forest is getting completely finished. It's community land, some of it. Game parks have a responsibility. Kitui County has a responsibility, but nobody, As a matter of fact, the most embarrassing thing is that my governor put up very big, elaborate gates, 8 million each, without a fence. What are we looking? Thank you very much.
Mheshimiwa Mutambo.
Thank you very much. Actually, my concern, I'm triggered by some information we got from Madam Leda. I didn't get your name.
Esther
Yes,
Mara, yeah.
when you said that you got a call from a lady from Mui. Actually, that's where I come from. And I'm the one who issued those title deeds. It's good also to give correct information. And my understanding is that the day I went to issue those title deeds, everybody actually was crying because of joy. So I don't understand when you tell the nation that some people were not happy. Maybe they were not happy with what I don't know. My concern here is that we are talking about land ownership. And I was expecting my good brother to discuss or to say this. We border our neighboring clan are Somalis, and they are encroaching to Mwingi or to Kitui County on daily basis, and this has caused death to so many people, and it has caused fear of people of Mwingi, people of Mwingi North, people of Ikuda, people of Kitui. How is this problem being addressed? Because actually this is the problem. We can talk about Navy or Army losing land to 2-3 people, but we are not talking about a community losing land to the other community. This is a big problem. We want to know how is this going to be addressed, and I want the CS and your team and the chairman how are we going to address this problem? Because they are encroaching, they are coming, claiming that they want to come and graze and go away, but once they come there, they stay there for 1 week. After that, they build houses. After that, they chase campers away. Then it becomes a war. Actually, it's a war. And the problem in those areas, some have guns, others has arrows, and it's a big problem. We may address an issue of an title deed of 1 acre in Nairobi, and we are not addressing a problem of a land which is more than 50, 60,000 acres, and we are talking of a team of 6, 7, 8 Somalis coming with the camels, and hundreds of campers being moved away from where they've been living for years and years. And this has become a big problem, and it is not being addressed. So I would want to hear us discuss or address that issue, which is affecting more lives other than maybe one person who has been, his land has been changed in the Ministry of Lands. So I think if you can address this, I will be very happy.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa Ndegwa.
Asante sana. Mimi nafikiri nitanena kwa Kiswahili kwa sababu hii iko live na watu wangu wengi wanaelewa Kiswahili. Kwanza kabisa ningependa kuzungumzia mambo ya hati miliki. Tulikuja hapa tuka cancel about 500,000 acres, and naweza nikasema kwamba hakuna kitu kimefanyika katika hiyo lands kupatiwa wananchi. Ukienda kwa National Land Commission, county government. Ukienda kwa county government, ministry. Mimi nataka tukaeni pamoja, hizi mashamba ziende kwa wananchi wa Lamu. Kile kitu kingine ningependa kusema, kwa sasa yale mashamba bado yanazidi kurudi kwa wale grabbers. That one should not continue. We cannot keep on cancelling titles and then they go back through the back door. Ile kitu kingine ningependa kusema, wananchi wa Lamu walipata ardhi miaka mingi iliyopita, lakini kama ndugu yangu Waititu waliposema hawajapata zile discharge. Mimi nauliza, mama mzee wa miaka 80 unamtaka aje afanye namna gani ndio apate ile discharge? Mimi ningesema hayo ni majukumu ya wizara na other stakeholders kuhakikisha kila mtu amepata discharge kwa wakati unaofaa. Lakini si useme akuje aambue kuja kesho atoke Lamu aje Nairobi. Kama mimi ni mjumbe nimejaribu kufuatilia mpaka nimechoka. Na mama mzee mnataka afanye namna gani? Ile kitu kingine ningependa kusema, hizo mashamba zimeaccumulate interest. Ningeomba wizara ya ardhi iweze waive kama vile county government wanaive katika land rates, watuwevie hizo interest ili wananchi wabaki kulipa zile ada ya mwanzo ambao walipatiwa hiyo mashamba na serikali na yao. Kwa sababu kama zile zimefika 100,000, being 100,000 kwa sasa, how expect mama wa miaka 100, mama wa miaka 80 kuweza kulipa 100,000. Tena aweze tena kufuatilia. Kwa hivyo mimi ningeomba kama tunataka kusuruhisha mambo ya ardhi hii, nyinyi watu ambao tuko wa ardhi ambao tunashikana, tushikane tusaidie hawa wananchi kwa sababu wanategemea sisi. Ningetaka kumalizia, mambo ya Lamu yako na mambo mengine ndani, na wengine sisi hatujui. Kuna wengine wanasema hizi shamba zilikuwa ni za mababu wetu na shamba ni ya serikali. Kwani ilikuwa ni ya mababu na serikali? Kama shamba ni ya serikali ipatiwe wananchi wake. Kwa hivyo we have issues. The titles are not being issued in Lamu. People are suffering. Tunamaliza miaka yetu 5 na hakuna mwananchi amepata title. Kwa hivyo ningependa nimalizie tena niseme, kufikia sasa Land Control Board haijaweza kufomiwa katika Lamu. Kwa hivyo ningemuomba waziri pia nayo ifanyike kwa haraka iwezekanavyo ili watu waweze kutransact biashara za ardhi kama wale wengine katika taifa la Kenya. Kwa hayo machache, asante.
Thank you, Mheshimiwa Weru.
Thank you. I will be very brief. First of all, I would like to agree with my brother that people who are in banking sector, I always ask myself, what's the quality of the assets that they are sitting on if the crisis is this big? I don't understand. When somebody says that he is secured as a financial institution, Mimi nashindwa hiyo mataito wanakaa naye, nasikia kuna taito zingine 10, 15 for one piece of land. I want to give an example of my experience and which I was helped by the minister. I was actually almost losing money on a transaction, a very big transaction of more than 23 acres in Karen. We were doing that transaction. And the minister, when I visited his office in the first 2-3 weeks, he referred me to his officers. But you could imagine the situation the particular investor could have gotten in, standing to lose in excess of 600 million shillings. And so this issue of land is a very, very serious issue, and we need to resolve it if we need to take this country forward. I want to particularly talk about the eastern part of Nairobi. And I'm not campaigning, but the eastern part of Nairobi needs a very quick resolution. In Eastlands, for example, in Tasia, in Huruma, in Embakasi, in fact, even Mamarusi Hospital, hiyo shamba, there are issues on the title of Mamarusi Hospital. A lot of people in Nairobi, and that is the elephant in the room, more than 70% of the titles in the eastern part of Nairobi, you are either having land without title and you have constructed, or you are having a title without land. Yeah? And that is something that we need to resolve, Bwana CS, urgently. I am suggesting that those innocent people who bought this land and constructed their properties, constructed their buildings, there needs to be a resolution, and I would recommend the kind of Waitiki kind of a model, because these people have invested their money. They have gone to financial institutions, wameomba pesa, alafu unakuta mtu mwingine pahali umejenga nyumba ya milioni 100, kuna mtu mwingine akona title. We need to look at eastern part of Nairobi, Bwana CS, as a matter of urgency. Finally, we need also, and I think even Bwana Governor, you are aware that you're also losing revenue. You can't correct revenue with people who have constructed buildings na hakuna title. Again, we need to look at an automatic renewal of leases. There is a concern, and we cannot discuss the land issue in this meeting if we do not discuss the concerns of automatic lease renewal in this city. We changed our laws. We said leases are going to expire after 100 years. Some of the lands are in Kirinyaga Road, Grogon, Parklands. They have exceeded the 100 years. And so this discussion of today should also focus on how we can secure those developed, expired leases. Finally, and where I'm also a victim, Bwana Governor, Bwana Kidero, Bwana CS, you need to protect private property. We have had instances in Nairobi, and especially some investors like the Red Kirima. I hear some of the land has been invaded illegally by people. There are people who have lost even excess of 10, 20 acres in Utawara. I myself am a victim. I've lost 10 plots. And this thing, you need to protect investors, Bwana Governor. You need to protect investors, Bwana CS, because there is no way we are going to attract investors in this city. There is no way we are going to expect financial institutions to lend money on titles and securities that are not secure. With those few remarks, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bwana Rufio. I'm not sure, but
yeah.
Very much the remarks.
There's a lot of responses to a lot of those
but
issues.
What we'll do
Let's
is
just
we'll
finish
take
those, yeah.
the questions,
Yeah.
and then we'll come and do a roundup, because we need to run out. Our time is way down.
Yeah.
Okay, and I know there are many questions from the audience. What I'll request for you to do is you can hashtag it, and send it to us, Status Summit or the Land Summit, and we shall be able to do that. Unfortunately, you can write it down and you can send it to us. I'll give you a timeline and a program on how it shall work. Thank you very much, Mheshimiwa Kinoti.
Okay, thank you very much, Big Ted, CS and the entire team. My name is Kinoti. I'm the MP for Bori in Meru County, actually the largest constituency in Meru. I had two very brief questions. First of all, Bori is made up of the last settlement in Meru, when there's a lot of pressure from other parts of Meru. People came to settle in Bori. And I wanted to know, because in some of the settlement scheme, you find the plan was to give 5 acres of land to the very needy people. But you find the powerful people back then were given even 100 acres, 1,000 acres, and so on. But unfortunately, they've now subdivided the land and sold it to third and even fourth parties. So my question is to the National Land Commission, how back can you go? Because you may discover an innocent Kenyan came and bought stolen land with a title deed attached to that land. It was stolen as 100 acres, subdivided into 2 acres or even 1 acre, sold to a simple Kenyan, no way of authenticating whether that land was stolen or not. How back can you go? Is there a mechanism in law to punish the original thief, not the person who is holding the title right now? And now, my last question is with regard to the National Land Commission still. Must a case be reported to you? Because you find some of the land, the wananchi may have no mechanism of going to the records. It's not so open as we may try to imply it here. Is there a way of National Land Commission having structures all over the country of even investigating land theft even without being reported to you? Wananchi may be sitting in the village, they suspect this land is stolen, it was public land, but they have no way of digging into the documents. Can National Land Commission intervene? Lastly, I wish to thank the entire Ministry of Land and the entire government led by Honorable Huru. I took over Bori when we were just 50% of the constituency titled. Within 3 years, we've achieved 95%. Out of the 20 locations we have in Bori district, 19 of them now have titles. The most successful has been the Keru and Kando, which is the largest land settlement area in the Meru Central Registry. And I want to thank you, the CS and the entire leadership of this government. What we've seen in Bori is a miracle. The most successful actually has been Sirimon. Sirimon was a settlement of the Mau fighters who are squatters. And for the 20 years they've been in that land, they never knew whether they were squatters or they were owners of that land. You fast-track the process and now they have title deeds. That has been a big achievement, really moving from 50% titling to 95%. It has not been easy. I know we've had long night meetings with the minister and push and shove, but we thank you that we are seeing results on the ground, and may God bless you in a very great way.
Thank you. Maybe let me take Mheshimiwa Sakuda, and then I'll come to the Senator.
Thank you very much. My name is Moses Ole Sakuda, MP Kajiado West. I also have the privilege of serving in the Parliamentary Land Committee as the Vice Chair. Let me say, because I'll be very brief, because of time, but let me appreciate the National Land Commission and the Ministry for the bills, the acts that we have been talking about here, because one of the challenges that we have had, even as a pastoral community, in terms of the community land bill, is the challenges and the 71% land mass in Kenya that is not even registered, is just known as community land. So by virtue of having that bill in place, now communities in Kenya actually can rest assured that as soon as the processes begin, then they will also be able to hold those title deeds just like any other Kenyans. The other thing that unfortunately is holding the whole thing back are the regulations. And we want to encourage both the ministry and the National Land Commission. Let's move fast with the regulations of those bills so that we can start seeing the manifestation of those bills in the ground. Of course, talking from a pastoralist, I and my pastoral experience, most of our pastoralist land is under community. But the beauty of that bill is that when the whole devolution came into place, the county governments, there are some county governments which took advantage of community land and invited investors without involving the communities around. So this bill will seek to correct all that, put structures in place so that if an investor comes, just like the minister said in the beginning, the land county governments are holding in trust, but the land actually belongs to the community, and therefore they can be able to be involved in the discussions. I also want to correct a perception that I've had here about the county management land boards. When we did that amendment in the land amendments bill, we were looking at what are the roles of independent institutions like National Land Commission or like IEBC and the rest. And according to the Constitution, the National Land Commission have been given the powers to set up their offices, to devolve their functions to the counties, not necessarily through boards, but at least their presence can be felt, just like the example of IEBC, which is conducting its activities out in the constituencies, not through boards. So at least it was very good to hear that committees are being set up because they're very good. You know, people can be able to reach them, and somehow the perception out there with the Kenyans is that they trust the National Land Commission more. I don't know why. Let me say finally, there are a lot of historical injustices that are being corrected or are in the process of being corrected. For us in Kajiado County, we have a very good case, and that is the Mosiro adjudication scheme. And I must commend the ministry and the National Land Commission, because in the 80s, some people in the Ministry of Lands sat together somewhere in a hotel in Nairobi. They looked at the map, they subdivided it, 150,000 acres, they issued titles, but survey they never went to the ground. Individuals were given titles, and they are not from that place. It was a very wrong thing to have happened. But going forward, we thank all of you, because now, at least by 20th of this month, you know, that process has been corrected, and the right owners in Mosiro, you know, ward will be able to, the process will begin for a committee to be put in place. So muendelee namna hiyo roho ya kucorrect hizo historical injustices, na Mungu atawabariki. Hata kama mtapata shamba, maombi mtapata.
Thank you very much, the Honorable Senator.
Thank you. Mine will be brief. I only comment from a perspective of my committee. I happen to be the chairman of Committee of Lands in the Senate. But listening to what all the comments that have been made by the CS and all the panelists, there seems to be a few disconnects. Particularly if I start on the issue of the existing law of sanctity of title. The chairman of any National Land Commission here was talking of how to demolish big buildings and how to follow all cases of historical injustices. And it happened that I thought error number 209, if the Maasais come to reclaim it and the Kikuyus, there will be no Nairobi City. So we have to start thinking, do we have common law in Kenya? If you have to use common law, then there are some areas whereby you might find chasing Chomondele alikuwa naitwa Rondaramea, chasing Rondaramea or chasing Lord Grogan may be very difficult. Having said that, I know we are going to develop a land information management system. This system, if it's not integrated, you will end up with other loopholes whereby the connectivity between land and other services is so great. I don't want to go into that, but from a known professional practice, this is something that the CS, you need to look into. That's why when we were making the law, the new integrated law, we gave you the mandate to make the integrated land information management system, and then NLC is mandated to look into public land, because most of the problems of public land are transited when land gets registered, and then it comes to the ministry under a different regime. About county boundaries, the CS told us how they have been resolving county boundaries. From where I'm coming from, I think you cannot deal with county boundaries unless you go to Article 188 of the Constitution. That article, if you're going to use it, you have to go through the long haul of constitution making. Because a commission has to be formed, and the matter has to go through National Assembly, it has to go through Senate with 2/3 voting, and including public participation all over Kenya. This is not something I would advise that you do piecemeal, because there are so many counties having the same problem of boundaries. Right now, if I tell you in my committee, we have like 18 of them lined up. Some of them arguing about small things as a blockation between Bungoma and Busia. Now, if we have to go that way, this is a topic you need to start looking at, even as cabinet. I can see the head of public services here. This is something that needs to be taken up, not even at ministry level, but at national level. Finally, about the valuation. I don't know why the PS, you have the Land Acquisition Act. These people who are making prices go through the roof, why don't you use the act, do the proper valuation, deposit the money in the court, and proceed with the project? That provision is there. I rest my case. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And Yvonne, before I come back to you, and at the fear of, at the risk of losing goodwill and friends, this is how we shall do this. I'll allow only Madam Katha to speak, and then the planner will speak, and then the chairman of the Parliamentary Land Committee will also speak. I will give it to the governor to make a comment, and I'll take it back to the panel for a roundup, and then we shall be able to leave this place, because time has gone and we cannot dwell too much on this. All I'm requesting is, if you have a question which you need answered urgently, is that you shall be able to take up the addresses and send it to us, and we shall also ask the CS to give us a timeline when we should expect answers to be posted on a public portal. Madam Katha.
Thank you. I'll take this opportunity to thank the CS and his team for what they are doing. About my county, the Tharaka-Nithi County, my people are happy at the moment, but I would like to request the CS to expedite the exercise so that before next year, before we go for the elections, our people are settled and they are comfortable. Mr. CS, I have a request, a personal request that I want to ask you to find out about the succession cases. They are taking a lot of time in the courts. So please try to talk to the judiciary so that when the cases are taken there, when somebody dies, the families are trying to get the administration letters. It is taking a lot of time. And when the letters or the documents are taken from the court, when they go to the government press, they also take another time. So this one is really taking the families and those who are trying to get the administration letters is taking a lot of time. I really want to thank you, the ministry, the government, for what they are doing, because these cases have been there for many years, and I know, and I'm sure that Tharaka-Nithi County will be happy people next year. Thanks so much.
Thank you. We'll go to the Honorable Chairman, Mheshimiwa.
Thank you so much. My name is Alex Mwiro, Chair, Departmental Committee on Lands, Kenya National Assembly. Just very quick ones, and sometimes I will draw some caution in terms of what we're likely to be implementing on a CS. One is on the community land bill, where you've seen quite a number of conflicts, especially in the area between Ukambani and the Northeastern, is that there's an investor interest declaration and alienation of community land. So therefore, we need to move very fast to make sure that we delineate or define those community lands within those particular areas to avoid further conflicts. That is number one. Number two is the actualization of the same Land Act. You need to move with speed to develop the regulations so that at least we are able, even before the end of probably this financial year, the Parliament would have, of course, done with the regulations, passing of the regulations, to make sure that it helps you to actualize the Act. One of the panelists talked about squatting and a professional squatting. I think it is the high time now as Kenyans we are able to develop a profile or a profound squatter, squatters in this particular country, so that at least we don't require to be bearing squatters every other time whenever there is availability of some land somewhere, so that we are able to curb that particular problem, so that we are able to deal with the professional squatting. Because what happens is that the same fields you might find in the Rift Valley, you'll find it in Coast, and it is still calling it a squatter. So I think we need to profile all of them to know how many they are and how much land probably we can set aside for that particular purpose. 3 bills are expected through Parliament, and I think it's good that these stakeholders are able to know. One is the Survey Act bill. That already has been gazetted and supposed to be, it is already in the committee of budget for the purposes of clearance, whether it is a money bill, so that we can move to the next step. The other one is the fiscal planning bill, which is the Senate. I will talk with my counterpart, Honorable Lenny Kivuti, Senator, because they have already debated and they have done some amendments from whatever we have done as a National Assembly, so that we are able to get to the mediation committee very quickly to make sure that we dispense off with that matter. The other one is the Land Value Index Amendment Bill, which I think has been mentioned here before. That one is already before my committee. But it's quite unfortunate that even when we gazette, we put in the Kenya Gazette for the purposes of public participation, we only got 2 memoranda as a committee. So actually what I'm saying is that the public participation was not very good on that particular bill. And I think I would give some leeway, even if it's by the soft copies. Probably we still can get a few of them before we take our report before the Parliament for further debate. Lastly, is on the issue of the historical land injustices. The problem with this, it has become a little bit difficult to define from where it begins to where it ends, and the metamorphosis it takes. Because sometimes, like you hear about Moslo, there are people who were there, Maasais were there, but some people sat down somewhere, subdivided the land, and gave themselves titles. The other structure of it is where probably a certain community was pushed by another community, and that area was settled by another community. We were talking about 209, which is Nairobi. So I think we will need to be very careful in terms of what we may call historical injustice acts, so that at least we are able to deal with that matter. And on the issue of the boundaries, especially Meru and Tharaka County, the way CS said, indeed, you have heard what Honorable Lenny Kivuti or Senator Lenny Kivuti has said, because law must be followed. A law is there. And any review of such boundaries, say, let us look at Article 188 and Article 89 of the Constitution, to make sure that we follow the law to the letter, other than doing piecemeal issues or things that are likely to affect the community and maybe flare up some problems there. And the review is supposed to be done every 8 years. Like, after the promulgation of our Constitution, the review shall be done now 8 years from 2010. Therefore, you cannot just wake up today and say you are doing a county boundary. But I would urge the Cabinet Secretary that, regardless of the boundary, kindly let's do the parcel boundaries and education in those particular areas for people to have their titles as they wait for their line or administrative lines. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Before I get to the Governor, Mr. Dr. Esho, who is the chair of the Kenya Institute of Planners, will just give us a 2-minute overview and then I'll head to the governor.
Thank you very much. I just want to talk about the missing link in today's discussions, and that is planning. I think it has been mentioned here and there. I just want to enlighten you that Kenya is probably one of the most planned countries, however, in Africa. However, we are not a planning society. We never allocate the funds necessary for implementation of plans. So even as the governor comes, he knows very well that he has a lot of nice plans in his cabinets, but then even the county government has not allocated funds. Now, you know what is said about countries, people that fail to plan, they fail. And that is exactly what is happening. I'm concerned from the planning point of view that we are issuing titles without planning first for those titles. I'm also concerned that we are building what we are calling bypasses without proper land use planning around those bypasses. Now, which means we don't have bypasses in Nairobi at all. What we have is urban thoroughfares. The eastern bypass now, the speed is about 40 kilometers per hour after spending all that money. And I think we need to always put planning before any public investments in infrastructure to avoid the situation that we have right now. I'll touch a bit about the physical planning bill that several members of parliament have mentioned. I think we need planning laws that give the counties, which have now been given the mandate to prepare plans and enforce plans, the teeth to be able to do the work that they're supposed to do. As it is now, I think the laws before the two houses are weak, and probably, as the member just said now, there is need for greater public participation, to invite more public participation on those bills so that we can give our country a chance really to come up with regulations that are enforceable and that are very strong. But finally, I would just like to conclude by asking government to allocate more resources to show its seriousness to transform Kenya into a planning society. We need to have a planning culture in this country. But it can start with government by allocating adequate resources, both for plan preparation and plan implementation. The plans that we are using now are outdated, including the plan that we are using to build the bypasses of Nairobi. That plan was prepared and approved in 1971. So it's outdated. It's no longer even in force. What we need is a new plan to figure out where do we need to put bypasses and what land use measures are we going to put around those bypasses. If you use land use, for instance, if you designate the land around the bypasses as agricultural, then you'll control land values that you're struggling with now. And the bypasses will serve their purpose. The same with towns like Konza. There was no thoughtful action, deliberate action to think of what to do with the land around it. A land was purchased, a billboard was put up, and everybody started buying land around it. Slums have come up, and the planners went there after to try and figure out how to create a buffer zone. But how do you create a buffer zone for land which people have already developed? So I'm just saying that we need to put planning before any public investment in anything and before any decision. So if you make a decision that you need a bypass, can it be a bit secret at the beginning so that you can finalize the plans and then you roll out the investment program? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Great view there from the planners. The governor will make his comment and then I'll head out to the panel.
Thank you very much. I think this session was about the way forward, and I would like to commend the CS for developing and maintaining a positive working attitude with the National Lands Commission, and through that we've seen quite a lot of progress has been made. I do remember a little bit earlier on in 2013, the president had the vision of establishing a team that would implement the national spatial data in informatics. I see that's taken a bit of time for it to come through, but I think it would be important because we do know that this particular team that the president wanted to put in place would have involved the Ministry of Lands, National Lands Commission, Nairobi City County, Mombasa, Kwale, Taita, and of course Kiambu. And these are the areas probably whose land values are significant. But I think, and of course KRA. But I believe because KRA was brought in, I don't know whether Ms. Anjirene is here, some people developed cold feet because the same reason why there are conflicts of land, there are people who did not want transparency, accountability, and even trust that our friend from IBM was saying. So I think that what you're doing in digitization and what you're doing in terms of getting the data to be digital, it would be still important to bring in that team that the president had a vision for and the president wanted to put together. I think, secondly, the issues that were raised by my friend, I don't know, I think it looks like he's left. A member of parliament for Dagoretti South. We've been working with National Lands Commission and the ministry very, very closely, more particularly in the Eastlands area. You'd be surprised to know that we lose an average of 10 to 15 people a month in Nairobi on issues to do with land. People who get, who lose their lives through homicide. And if these issues are brought to our attention, which they are, and they're being given due attention by the National Lands Commission, I know that from tomorrow you'll be looking at about 102 parcels over and above the ones that you've resolved, including the City Park, Karura, the riparian lands, and of course the one that the Vice Chair mentioned in Woodley. It took a bit of time for National Lands Commission, like a steam engine, to get going. But I think now you're going full steam, and please do not allow yourselves to be derailed by politicians. And by way of going forward, I would request that politicians should not be allowed anywhere near National Lands Commission or near Ministry of Lands. The second thing, in terms of the way going forward, I think putting that team together that was supposed to be the NSDI would be important. Last but not least, Chair of National Lands Commission and Waziri, our army is meant to protect our borders, not to put tanks blocking roads for people from Eastern Bypass to the Kangundo Road. Last but not least, I think that the biggest cause of conflict or impediment to national cohesion are issues of land. And I think it would be unfair not to allow the chair, Honorable Kaparo, to say a word.
You are a very generous man. Thank you very much. I have 3 quick issues on this. First, land has been, is, will always be a very emotive issue, and therefore those making pronouncements on land must do so carefully and based on fact and not on emotion. Number 2, we need finally to find out a way in which we can eliminate or lessen triggers of conflict, drivers of conflict. And land is one of them. And it looks to me that we may need a summit to discuss injunctions and prohibitory orders. Because I think injunctions have metamorphosized over time from temporary reliefs to be permanent impediments. So those in charge of this, I beg, if we can have a time to discuss this. Finally, I like to mention that some of the issues raised as injustices, as said by the chair of the Lands Committee, are themselves very easy to be dangerous drivers of conflict. Be careful how you do it and where you do it and with who. Finally, this county boundaries is an issue that I face every day when I go out in the field. It is a major conflict driver. The county boundaries. I do not agree with those who say we must follow the constitution to find out where the county boundaries are. There is a law, in fact. There is the Districts and Provinces Act, which has never been repealed. Now, the Districts and Provinces Act clearly shows the demarcation of every district as then they were called. They are now called counties, but they were districts. So you can actually find out the boundaries of every county in Kenya. And all you need are surveyors. You don't need politicians. You don't need twig-carrying mobs. You don't need agitators. You actually need technocrats from the two counties. Please decide. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bwana Kaparo. I'd hoped you would just say order just for the sake of us remembering how you used to say it. Sometimes I tell it to my children just to remind myself how it used to sound. Yvonne, take us home, please.
Yes. We've been here a while, so I'd just like to give you, please make it very brief, but there's one question that apparently we must ask, and this is about the ruling that was made by the Mombasa court recently that said that any person who does not develop his land for more than 10 years then cannot claim right to ownership of that land. So just tell us, I think, Abigail, this is something you might want to comment on, what this means for land ownership going forward. Does this empower the Commission in terms of its administration and management of land in the country?
For what I'd like to say is that if you look at the law on adverse possession, it was not repealed and it is still there. So and adverse possession could not be obtained through a court process. So if you got land, you did not use it, somebody came on your land, they could go to court and claim adverse possession. And that has been going on since time immemorial. But also, I also want to bring people back to the letters of allotment that people are given over public land. Of course, you can't do that on private land. Private land is private land. It is protected by the Constitution. You cannot invade private land and begin to say that you want to claim adverse possession. Most of this is happening on leased land, where people have gotten leases from the commissioner, from the government or the Commissioner of Land, the defunct Commissioner of Lands. So in this case, the conditions of the letter of allotment was that the land had to be developed within a period of 24 months. But like we were saying, that many people are keeping these lands for speculative purposes. So of course, if you look at this and then you have a letter of allotment, you don't develop your land, somebody gets into your land and they go ahead and they claim that they can also be allocated, they qualify. Because first of all, you've broken the conditions of the letter of allotment. So I think that's something that we need to look at. We need to look at it better, but also I think the Commission and the legal team at the Commission is looking at that ruling really to understand it properly and in perspective really on how leased land is going to be managed going forward.
Okay, I'd like to start then on that end, Nick. Just your final thoughts very quickly and then we'll come across the panel.
Okay, thank you. Mheshimiwa I'll just talk about it from a personal standpoint. Mheshimiwa earlier talked about the older ladies, the 80-year-olds and so on. I have one of those, a mother, who spends a lot of her time chasing people in the ministries, in the counties, whether it's here or Thika or Mombasa or wherever, trying to get these things done. That creates a lot of fear. When you talk about development, people don't want to go and develop property because they don't know who they'll find over there and what unscrupulous people on the outside are going to do or say or anything. So there's a lot of fear which is holding us back. I think what we need to do is we need to really focus on eliminating that fear. And we'll eliminate that fear if we've already done the planning, which was very well explained. We need to start doing things. Look how many people are in this room. Look how much good content has come. A tremendous amount has come. But I dare to say much of this content was already known by many of the people who came. When are we going to start doing something? What's going to come out of this thing? I think when you hear Honorable Kaparo speak, you hear others speak, you hear about the number of people dying in Nairobi and everywhere, the executive, or is it the judiciary, or is it parliament, should look at this as a national emergency. I don't know what's going to happen August 8th next year, but there will certainly be challenges around this land. We need to get going. And that means tomorrow, maybe even this afternoon, get people together to figure out how to procure, how to engage, how to start doing things. Otherwise, I promise you we'll be back here in January, in March and July, and everybody will have their own story to talk about, somebody they know where something happened or something happened. Enough already. When are we going to do something? So, I know the PS, I know the CS are trying to do it, but I know they're also hamstrung. Let's look at the things that are stopping them, and maybe HE, I don't know, maybe we have PS Kinyo here, maybe people can just make executive orders. Do what you need to do now, move, get going, stop it. Let's not have anybody die. Let's not have old 80-year-old grandmother widows scared about their land. Let's move. That's what I'll say.
Thank you, Nick. Esther?
Thank you. I would have wanted to speak when Mheshimiwa from Wingi was here. But all of us know that titling here is patriarchal in this country and all over the world. So when we talk about women and girls feeling not participating in the titling that has been going on, is real life case studies, because the title is usually given to the man. And there are many girls, there are many women who will not. We've been asking the government,
Esther,
can we have joint titling?
Good. I'd like to move it forward. We have 5 minutes.
Joint titling. And I also want to talk about public participation.
Yeah.
I think we need to consider the citizens as part and parcel of designing the solutions for land in this country. Okay. And communities do have solutions. I don't think I agree the professionals do have a very great role to play, but I think more important the people themselves.
Right.
They know the boundaries, they know who are their
Great.
neighbors, they know the family members. And if we ignore that, we are not going to solve the issue of land in this country.
Thank you, Esther. A minute each.
Thank you.
Please.
Thank you
I'm
very
sorry
much,
about
Yvonne.
that,
One thing about the boundaries. Boundaries are known, but people use boundaries to take other people's property. Let us give people title deeds and survey their land. When I came here, I was coming. Somebody called me and told me, tell people Meru County and the Rakanidi have no boundary issue. Let people get their title deeds where they are, in Kiambori B, in Tharaka, and the job of saying their county boundaries will end. The last thing, on the land value index, the problem is the land acquisition. The Land Acquisition Act was repealed. The regulations that were there are no longer used, and that problem was being contained of speculation. Instead of just creating an index, let us call it the Land Acquisition either act or whatever that covers all the investments and infrastructure, and that then will capture all the issues, not just control the market, but capture all the acquisition issues, including community participation and curbing the issues of conflicts and environmental safeguards. Thank you.
Thank you, Manda.
Thank you so much. There are so many issues that were raised for the Commission to answer, but I'd
We
like
have
to
a minute.
respond to them as quickly as I can. First and foremost, as we wait for the National Land Information Management System, I'd like to tell the investors there is no replacement for due diligence. When you're dealing in land, due diligence, due diligence, due diligence, times 10. If in doubt, come to the Commission. Secondly, the Historical Injustices Act law is now in place. Section 15 of the National Land Commission Act was amended. It has given us parameters on how to deal with the historical injustices, and has given us some, I wish I could tell you how it is, but I have only a minute. So let me stop there. Please read. We need to do advocacy. Read. It has told us how to deal with historical injustices. Thirdly, protection of private property. Most of the things that you're seeing in these lands, people are invading people's properties. We will not regularize invaders of private property. You can build your $100 million house, we will not regularize you. An invader is an invader. Get out of people's land. If you want to take land, talk to the owner and pay him. we will not regularize land grabbers. That as a commission, we will not regularize irregularities. And then the last thing I wanted to say is that the commission, we have devolved. We have 47 officers in the 47 counties, now led by the NLC coordinators in every county. You can reach us. We carry out cases either by receiving a report or even on our own volition. And your report need not be a report, just needs to be, nimeona shamba imeenda. That is enough. That is enough for us to start an investigation.
Thank you.
So thank you very much. I want to thank the CS. First of all, CS, thank you so much for coming and giving us a good environment. My dear sister and schoolmate, Mariam, thank you. The sky is the limit.
Thank you.
We will do land reform.
Clearly the chemistry, we see where it comes from. Madam PS,
Abigail was my, why are you giving me your mic? I have mine.
The chemistry, eh?
Yes, indeed. I have a good story of an old lady in Kiambu registry recently, and it'll pick up what Mheshimiwa Waititu also said. She was being disenfranchised by her own children, and they were claiming that she was already dead. And this was a child who had gotten more out of the property. He had gotten, the will had given him more than his siblings, yet the greed or whatever it is that it was, he wanted to take the rest. But through the digitized data, the registrar and the newly posted registrar who was there, they were able to tell here that there was something fishy. They were able to contact the rest of the family, and then they called that man as well. And imagine, he almost fell when he realized that he had been apprehended, because the rest of the family was sitting there and the old woman was in tears. She came in walking in crutches. So digitization is helping. These are some of the things that we are doing, and we have started doing them. With the bankers, we will tell you that the new digitized title deed has a QR code and a barcode at the back, which if you scan it, the details of the owner will appear immediately on your phone. So for every new title deed that we have issued or lease, it is now in this new digitized program. And when we conclude verifying all the registries, we're expecting to have more secure information, more reliable information, which you can at least be able to rely on. Okay. We're going to work with the sector to be able to automate far much faster. I think IBM will be happy to hear that. And our geospatial data center is doing the kind of links that we want to do. So we have happy times ahead, and to all of you, thank you very much. You have been very, very supportive, and let's keep this journey going. We are going to reform the land sector. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Madam PS, and thank you everybody. And thank you for those watching us at home. Obviously, the issue of land is one that we cannot discuss in just a few hours, but thank you for your attention. Thank you, everybody, and hope we will come here and again talk about something more. Thank you. Good day, everyone.
Tumeissue karibu 3 million new titles.
Thank you so much. Indeed, the Summit on Lands has just ended here at State House with some of the issues that have been brought forth. Most of the programs here and most of the discussions here are centering mostly on historical land injustices and how to deal with some of the historical land injustices that have been talked about. Indeed, there was a little touch on the TJRC report, but it wasn't as much as it was expected from the people who came here to discuss about the issues surrounding land in the country and the management of land in Kenya. Now, one of the issues also that was touched much is about how lands were historically irregularly allocated to politicians or those people who are close to power. And I remember the National Lands Commission chair maintaining that the laws do not partake politicians as part of the management of land, and so anyone who was irregularly allocated land in the past or during the past regimes will have to lose the land. The land will be reversed back to the government or to public utility. Now, those are the issues that have come out of these discussions here, with people even mentioning directly the lands or portions of lands that were actually involved. Remember then the Langata primary land grab. the issue came up here with the National Lands Commission chairman saying that the issue has been resolved, but that was contradicted by Dr. Evans Kidero, who is the governor for Nairobi, who maintained that according to his records in his office, the issue is yet to be fully resolved. So it's an issue that has brought about contradicting information from the county government of Nairobi and the National Lands Commission. Another issue also that talked about is about corruption in land dealings, where people have been duped, people have lost lands because of corruption in these offices in across the country. Those are lands offices. When we talk about that, they touched so much about issues touching also on areas that were reserved, for example, for forest or let's say natural resources, but have been grabbed by the people in power. That's coming in mind, the Aberdares and the Mau forest, where people have also encroached on the lands. Now, from State House Nairobi, back to you at the Nation Center. We go back to our normal programming.
I can watch thousands of hours of local and international series, movies, sports highlights, documentaries, kids shows, and more. Go to showmax.com to subscribe.
With Protex, I know my little explorer is always protected. Even when he's playing for hours and is exposed to germs.